Fasai is a radiant 25-year-old who works at an arts magazine, known for her skills and her kindness toward her colleagues. She's been with Eat for over a decade, completely devoted to him. Today is the day he defends his doctoral thesis, a huge milestone, and she can't wait to celebrate his success. With a bouquet in hand and a heart full of excitement, Fasai heads out, ready to support him. On her way, Fasai meets her best friend, Bifai, who helps touch up her makeup and shares a rumor she overheard. Eat plans to propose to the woman he loves today. Thrilled, Fasai dares to hope her dream of a life with him is finally coming true. At the ceremony, Eat's hard work pays off as he's offered a prestigious role as head of surgery in a private hospital, thanks to his advisor. Then, with all eyes on him, Eat announces he's ready to reveal the love of his life. Fasai's heart races, but in an instant, her world shatters as he proposes to Kwan, his advisor's daughter, declaring that she's been his support all along. The truth sinks in, Eat never loved her, he only stayed with her for the benefits her father's connections could bring. Stunned and heartbroken, Fasai barely manages to hold herself together as Bifai quietly comforts her, saying her only mistake was loving the wrong person. Bifai takes her home, and Fasai decides to keep the heartbreak from her parents to spare them any worry. Later, their other friend, Nude, calls with some sad news. She can't join their planned Japan trip due to a family funeral. Seizing the opportunity, Bifai suggests Fasai take Nude's place to escape the pain without drawing any attention to her sadness. Needing the break, Fasai agrees. Meanwhile, in Japan, we meet Daniel, a man with a powerful presence and natural charm that brightens any room. However, beneath his captivating exterior, Daniel is a mafia boss who leads the Golden Dragon Group. Today is a painful anniversary, the death of his beloved Baton, who looks strikingly like Fasai. Haunted by memories, Daniel reflects on how much he loved her and the tragic fact that he was responsible for her death. The next day, Fasai and Bifai arrive in Japan, just as Min, a Hong Kong mafia boss leading the White Tiger gang, arrives too. At the airport, Min spots Fasai and is stunned by her resemblance to Baton. Desperate for answers, he chases after her, but she slips out of sight before he can reach her. Min has his reasons for being in Japan. He's here to confront Daniel and retrieve a black book that holds records of the White Tiger's illegal operations. Knowing Daniel plans to turn this book over to the police, Min is also seeking revenge for a massacre years ago, where his family was wiped out by the Golden Dragon gang. Back in Tokyo, Bifai does everything she can to help Fasai laugh again, urging her to never shed tears over a man like Yi. In a hidden location, Daniel tells his right-hand man, Biao, that today's the day he'll hand over the black book to the police. But lurking nearby, Daniel's driver, an undercover White Tiger member, overhears the plan and tips off his gang. The White Tigers ambush Daniel's car, only to find a mannequin and the double-crossing driver inside. As they realize they've been deceived, Daniel and his men appear, surrounding them. Min confronts Daniel, accusing him of sacrificing his own driver. Unfazed, Daniel responds coldly, saying he was aware of the betrayal, and in their world, treason is a death sentence. In the heat of the standoff, Min's right-hand man, Tian Kong, attempts a peaceful negotiation to retrieve the black book without further bloodshed. Daniel agrees to hand it over, but only if Min relinquishes all gang operations to him. Daniel promises to split profits equally but emphasizes that he alone will control the entire organization. Min coldly rejects the offer, declaring that his definition of fairness is seeing Daniel dead. Both leaders agree to settle their differences through a fight, using weapons only if one gains the upper hand. As they clash, Daniel overpowers Min, but instead of finishing him off, he fires away from him, taking off as if daring Min to follow. Min takes the bait, and Daniel leads him to a remote spot, catching him off guard and preventing any retaliation. Daniel insists he has no desire to hurt him, claiming his actions are ultimately for Min's own good. Suspicious and angry, Min accuses Daniel of only serving his own interests. Unleashing his pent-up rage, Min strikes Daniel, blaming him for stealing Baton, the woman he once loved, and for driving his father to death and his brother to madness by disobeying Daniel's orders. He's finally ready to settle the score. As Min's punches land, Daniel only defends himself, choosing not to fight back. But when Min draws a weapon, Daniel has no choice but to do the same. Gunfire erupts, leaving Min grazed on his side, while Daniel takes a bullet to his shoulder. Realizing Min won't relent until he's dead, Daniel escapes. Wounded but determined, Min orders Tian Kong to search every corner of the city to capture him, convinced he couldn't have gone far in his condition. Meanwhile, Fasai, hoping for some quiet time, heads out to buy gifts for her parents. Bifai stays behind, resting after a late night out with friends. Daniel, seeking medical supplies, ends up in the same store as Fasai. When he spots her, he's frozen in shock, struck by her uncanny resemblance to Baton. His intense gaze unsettles Fasai, who assumes he's deranged and runs out, leaving her purchases behind. Daniel chases her, catching up as she confronts him, accusing him of being a creepy stalker. In the heat of the moment, Daniel instinctively grabs her, but their confrontation is interrupted by the White Tiger gang surrounding him, guns drawn. In a flash, Daniel pulls Fossey along, and they flee with the gang in pursuit. Just before they're cornered, police arrive, drawn by the gunshots, and the gang scatters. Although shaken, Fossey feels a strange sense of safety as Daniel reassures her. When she hears him speak fluent Thai, she's surprised and starts to walk away. Daniel grabs her once more, and she suspiciously accuses him of being involved in dangerous dealings. Unfazed, Daniel demands her name. Fossey refuses, but he pulls her passport from her bag, learning she's Fossey. Seeing she's not Bhutan, he looks disappointed. When Fossey threatens to scream unless he returns her passport, Daniel draws his gun, forcing her to lead him to her hotel. She reluctantly agrees, but once there, she tries signaling the hotel staff for help. Noticing, Daniel warns her to stop, adding he'll take matters into his own hands if necessary. In her room, he removes his shirt to treat his wound, revealing a dragon tattoo, the golden dragon emblem, on his back. Startled, Fossey hides in the bathroom, calling Bfi for help. Though slightly tipsy, Bfi promises to come right away. Elsewhere, Daniel's right-hand man, Biao, scours the streets looking for him, while a groggy Bfi stumbles out, calling for help before collapsing. Back in Fossey's room, Daniel removes the bullet with a knife, gritting his teeth through the pain. When Fossey steps out, she's horrified to see him injured. She offers to call an ambulance, but he refuses, wanting to avoid any extra attention. Realizing he's hiding from something serious, she advises him to choose a better path if he wishes to avoid situations like these. Despite everything, her compassionate side prevails, and she helps him clean his wound. Amused by the cute floral bandages she uses, he chuckles, remarking on the irony. She notes she's good at first aid, a skill she learned while dating E. As she finishes, she tells Daniel to think happy thoughts to ease the pain. When he stares at her, she asks why, and he replies with a sly smile, "Just doing what makes me happy," making her blush as she hurriedly looks away. Spying her diary on the table, Daniel picks it up, reading her thoughts until she catches him and snatches it back, scolding him. She tells him she'll wait downstairs until he leaves. Daniel warns her he now knows her address and hints he won't let her off lightly if she tries anything. When Fossey leaves, Tian Kong and his men from the White Tiger gang wait outside. Mistaking her for Bhutan, Tian Kong grabs her, intending to take her away. She screams, and Daniel charges in, fending off Tian Kong to protect her. When Tian Kong raises his gun, Fossey bites his arm, buying Daniel a moment to counterattack. Daniel swiftly pulls Fossey into one of the White Tiger gang's cars, and they make a daring escape. Tian Kong fires after them, damaging the car until it breaks down. Just then, a kind Japanese man driving by notices them and, seeing them stranded, invites them to his home to shelter from the incoming rain. Though Fossey doesn't understand his language, Daniel agrees and drags her along. At the man's home, Fossey is taken aback when Daniel says they'll be staying the night. Worried, she asks to return to the hotel, but Daniel explains they'd risk running into the White Tigers again, and he's too worn out to fight. Inside, the elderly couple prepares a small room with a single bed for them. Puzzled, she asks what Daniel told them to make them do this. With a smirk, he admits he lied, saying they were newlyweds to avoid suspicion. Just as Fossey begins to relax, she realizes her bag was left behind at the hotel and rushes outside to retrieve it, only to remember it fell during the chaos. Daniel's face shifts to deep worry when he hears Fossey mention that her bag holds several photos of her and her family. At the same time, Tian Kong hands over Fossey's lost bag to Chinmin. Opening it, Chinmin finds her journal and, upon seeing her picture, recalls glimpsing her at the airport. He quickly realizes she only resembles Botan, his lost love. Tian Kong gathers more information from the hotel, discovering that Fossey is just a Thai tourist on holiday with a friend. Satisfied, Chinmin orders him to locate Daniel and bring the girl. If she can't be found, they are to bring her friend instead. Meanwhile, Biao, Daniel's right-hand man, takes Bfi to the hospital to recover from her night of drinking. Bfi overhears him speaking to the nurse in Japanese and, feeling isolated, tries broken English. When she gets frustrated and starts muttering her thoughts out loud, Biao surprises her by responding in fluent Thai, remarking that no amount of crying will soften him. Overjoyed, she asks for his help to save her sister. Though reluctant, Biao agrees and accompanies her back to the hotel. At the hotel, Biao finds Daniel's dagger, assuring Bfi that her sister is safe with his boss. When she asks how he can be so sure, he casually mentions that if Daniel were dead, they would have sent his finger, or worse, his head. Bfi, horrified, faints. As Biao revives her, he notices Fossey's passport in her bag, shocked by her resemblance to Botan. Quickly, he tells Bfi they need to leave before Chinmin's men arrive to take her sister. Panicked, she insists on gathering her things, but Biao pulls her along. As they make their escape, they encounter members of the White Tiger gang. Biao fends them off one by one, his patience tested by Bifai's constant screaming, though her shouts also fuel her own courage to help him. Afterward, he takes her to his place to regroup. Once they're safe, Bifai demands answers. Biao tells her the truth without holding back. The people pursuing her sister are members of the White Tiger gang, led by Qin Min, an enemy of his own Golden Dragon gang. He explains they want Fasai because of her resemblance to Qin Min's deceased lover, Botan. Though skeptical at first, Bifai finally believes him after he shows her a picture of Botan. Still processing everything, she nods, and Biao tells her to freshen up. He returns with clothes for her, explaining he had his men retrieve both sisters' belongings from the hotel. Meanwhile, Daniel drifts into a haunted sleep, dreaming of Botan. He reaches for her, but every time he gets close, he sees her lifeless, bleeding, and he awakens in tears, guilt-ridden. Fasai's voice snaps him out of the dream, calling him giant since she still doesn't know his name. Startled, Daniel warns her not to wake him so suddenly, explaining that he instinctively reaches for his gun when surprised in his sleep. Unfazed, Fasai urges him to get dressed so they can return to the hotel. She even offers a disguise plan, handing him a piece of charcoal to darken their skin. Amused, Daniel chuckles, telling her the people after them aren't so easily fooled and are much more capable than she realizes. He assures her he'll take care of things, but she insists on leaving on her own, confident she can manage. Daniel doesn't stop her, certain she won't get far and will return soon enough. However, he's touched when he notices she's cleaned and ironed his blood-stained clothes. Unable to shake his concern, he dresses quickly and heads out to find her. As Fasai walks alone, she approaches a local woman, desperately pleading for help, telling her she just wants to go home. But the woman, lost in translation, misunderstands her, mistaking her request for a plea for vegetables. Embarrassed, Fasai returns to the elderly couple's house, awkwardly clutching a handful of vegetables. She tries to be helpful in the kitchen, but soon finds herself sitting alone, overwhelmed with emotion and unable to hold back her tears. Daniel, noticing her distress, quietly approaches her, but her response is defensive. She threatens to tell the elderly couple everything and ask for their help, which sparks a flash of anger in Daniel. He warns her to stay quiet if she wants to keep the couple safe, explaining that the men pursuing him wouldn't hesitate to drag them into trouble if they knew they were sheltering him. Gently but firmly, he urges her to calm down, saying her impatience could put them all in serious danger. Finally, as her emotions settle, Fasai withdraws to a quieter spot, penning a heartfelt letter to her parents. Daniel finds her and asks what she's doing. With a resigned tone, she explains she's writing a farewell letter, feeling as if her chances of survival are dwindling. Daniel attempts to reassure her, insisting that she'll get back safely, but she replies that nothing is guaranteed. She describes the surreal shift from the happiness she shared with Bifai just yesterday to hiding from strangers with unclear motives. When Daniel leans in to read her letter, she jokingly stops him, teasing that it contains instructions on where her father hides his money. If something happens to her, she says, her father will have a heart attack, so this letter will guide her mom on where to find the money and get him to the hospital. Touched by her innocence and humor, Daniel smiles, showing a rare glimpse of warmth. Fasai, noticing his softened expression, remarks that he looks much better smiling than he does with his usual fierce look, suggesting he should laugh more. She explains that even forced laughter can trick the brain into happiness. Suddenly, she springs to her feet, determined to teach him how to laugh, giggling in a comically exaggerated way. Daniel watches, baffled, dismissing her actions as ridiculous, adamant he'd never join in such nonsense. He starts to walk away, but Fasai grabs him to stop him, accidentally tearing his necklace. The moment shifts immediately, his expression hardens, and instead of accepting her apology, he grabs her letter and rips it in half, saying, "Now we're even." Outraged, Fasai slaps him, but Daniel grabs her hand, telling her she has no right to be angry, as her mistake came first. She fires back, accusing him of caring only about revenge and not considering other people's feelings. Declaring she's had enough, she says they'll part ways from this moment on. Fasai turns to leave, but Daniel blocks her path, firmly refusing to let her go. He picks her up, intending to carry her back, but she bites him in defiance, causing him to stumble and twist her ankle. Furious, she sits in silence, refusing to even look his way. Trying to make peace, Daniel mimics the silly laugh she taught him and, with a sheepish grin, asks for a chance to prove himself and protect her. Amused, Fasai softens, quickly forgiving him and remarking that he's lucky she has a forgiving nature. With their tensions eased, he carefully lifts her and carries her back to the elderly couple's house, showing an unexpected tenderness as he tends to her injured ankle. Back in Thailand, Eat faces mounting pressure from Kwan, who's frustrated that he still hasn't broken the news of their relationship to Fasai. Kwan urges him to be honest, but he brushes it off, assuming Fasai remains unaware of his betrayal since she didn't see him on his special day. Quan pretends to be patient, remarking that she only wants him to be upfront so no one mistakes her for a homewrecker. Eat commends her maturity, noting that she's much stronger than Fasai, and Quan, though feigning humility, reveals her true intentions through her intense gaze. Later, she visits Fasai's family's restaurant, subtly prying for directions to Eat's house. When they ask about her connection to him, she seizes the opportunity, claiming to be his fiancée. Fasai's family is shocked, informing her that Eat had once dated their daughter. The next morning, Daniel borrows the old man's car, driving out to find a signal so he can contact Biao. After an anxious wait, he finally reaches him, filling him in on the recent events and learning that Bi-Fi is safe. Unbeknownst to Daniel, Tian Kong is still on their trail and spots the borrowed car, realizing that Daniel and Fasai must be hiding nearby. Meanwhile, worried by Daniel's delay, Fasai wanders around the village in search of him, only to catch the attention of Tian Kong and his men. Just as they're about to seize her, Daniel arrives, opening fire to fight them off. His ammo runs out just as he's about to take down Tian Kong, so he strikes him and makes a quick escape with Fasai in his arms. He carries her deep into the forest, explaining that they can't return to the elderly couple's house, as he doesn't want to endanger them any further. Back with Bi-Fi and Biao, she notices the striking tattoos covering his arms, a dragon representing the Golden Dragon Gang, and a tiger, symbolizing the White Tiger Gang. Surprised, she blurts out, "Why would a Golden Dragon member have the mark of the rival gang?" Irritated, Biao snaps back, warning her to stay out of things that don't concern her. His response silences her, but she can't help but wonder about his past. That night, Daniel and Fasai rest in the forest under a star-streaked sky. When she stirs awake, she finds Daniel's jacket draped over her shoulders. Worried he might be cold, she carefully tries to return it, inching closer to him. But before she can pull away, Daniel gently draws her beside him, his voice barely a whisper as he tells her she has a kindness and resilience that no one else does. He asks her to promise him that no matter what happens, no matter where life takes them, she'll always protect her heart and stay true to herself. Overjoyed and moved, Fasai promises, vowing that she'll never let anyone change who she is. As the morning light filters through the trees, she watches him with quiet fondness, and Daniel tells her his men have prepared everything for a return to Thailand, along with her sister. Relieved and overjoyed, she realizes her journey home is finally within reach. Meanwhile, the White Tiger Gang spies report to Chinmin that Biao has picked up Fasai's friend and is on his way to the port. When Daniel and Fasai arrive there, she notices the reverent way his men treat him and suddenly realizes he's someone important. Curious, she asks who he truly is, but Daniel only tells her it's time to part ways. His men will lead her to her sister. Before he can say anything more, the White Tiger Gang appears on the scene. Without hesitation, Daniel orders his men to take Fasai away, but she resists, fear and concern filling her eyes as she worries for his safety. Frustrated yet overcome by the moment, Daniel pulls her close and kisses her as gunfire erupts around them. When he lets go, Fasai reluctantly follows his men, glancing back as Daniel's figure fades into the chaos, his silhouette becoming a lasting memory. 2 months later, Fasai clings to the memories of her time with Daniel in Japan, keeping his jacket and the broken necklace as silent reminders. She hopes to see him again, despite her doubts. On her way to work, she senses someone watching her, but when she turns, there's no one. Just then, she receives a call. Her magazine's building has burned to the ground. Rushing over, she finds nothing but ashes. That night, as she walks home, the eerie sensation returns, and she hides. But Chinmin steps out of the shadows, catching her by surprise. Panicked, she tries to escape, only to run into Tian Kong. She recognizes him instantly, realizing that Chinmin is the head of the White Tiger Gang. Chinmin approaches her with unsettling politeness, apologizing if his men frightened her and instructing Tian Kong to apologize as well. Though still afraid, Fasai tries to brush them off, hoping this is the last encounter she'll ever have with them. But as she turns to leave, Chinmin hands her a bag she had dropped. Apologizing for looking inside, he mentions he read her notebook and feels like he knows her now. Horrified, Fasai grabs the bag and hurries away, desperate to avoid more trouble. When she gets home, she discovers a strange drawing tucked inside her notebook, a chilling image of 2 people hanging. Elsewhere, Chinmin instructs Tian Kong to keep a close watch on her, believing she's his key to locating Daniel. Certain that Fasai has replaced Botan in Daniel's heart, he plans to use her to exact his revenge, feeling confident after witnessing Daniel's concern, and the kiss at the port. Across the sea in Hong Kong, Daniel reappears, no longer hidden in the shadows. Biao reports to him that the White Tiger Gang has made contact with Fasai. Meanwhile, back in Thailand, Bi-Fi is startled to find Chinmin sitting at her family's restaurant with her parents, behaving like an ordinary customer, engaging them in cheerful conversation. Unsettled, she tries to leave quickly, only for Chinmin to follow her outside. Handing her a business card, he offers her a job, promising that she'll understand the meaning behind the strange drawing she found in her notebook if she accepts. Curious yet cautious, she asks what kind of job he has in mind. Chinmin, impressed by the depth of emotion in her artwork, suggests her talent could help his brother recover. She probes further, wanting to know about his brother's condition, but Chinmin remains mysterious, promising her answers if she agrees to work with him. As Fasai and Chinmin talk, a car pulls up, and Eat steps out, asking if there's an issue. Without hesitation, Fasai jumps into Eat's car to get away from Chinmin, but before they drive off, Chinmin stops her momentarily, urging her to think over his offer, assuring her she wouldn't regret it. Once they're on their way, Eat asks about Chinmin, but Fasai brushes it off, evading any real explanation. When she feels safely away, she requests to be let out, wanting to walk alone. Eat, trying to reconcile, asks if she's avoiding him because of his relationship with Quan. He tries to justify it, insisting that Quan is the only one truly suited for him. Fasai clarifies that her disappointment wasn't about him choosing Quan, it was about him betraying her trust. However, she thanks him, acknowledging that his actions led her to meet someone better in Japan. Relieved, Eat suggests they remain friends, and Fasai agrees. At work, Fasai's boss gathers everyone, sharing the unfortunate news that the fire's damage could mean shutting down the magazine. He gives them until month's end to figure out their options. That night, Fasai learns her father owes 200,000 baht, a debt he took on to renovate their home. The lender, Sia, has started threatening him for repayment. Determined, Fasai reassures her father, saying she has some savings to help cover part of the debt, even though she knows her job is at risk. She silently resolves to stay strong, reminded of her promise to Daniel. The next day, Fasai heads to work, and Nude, her co-worker, tells her there might be hope. A potential investor could save the magazine. Encouraged, Fasai feels a spark of optimism. But when her boss calls her in, she's shocked to see Daniel standing there as the new investor. Her excitement is dashed when Daniel maintains a cold, formal demeanor, acting as if this is their first meeting. After her boss leaves, she confronts Daniel, asking why he's ignoring her. He warns her that it's dangerous for anyone to get close to him, revealing that despite her strangeness, he feels grateful for her help and doesn't want her to lose her job. Fasai, disappointed by his indifferent attitude. Later, she confides in Bifai that the new investor is the giant she met in Japan, though his distant behavior confuses her. Eager to help, Bifai finds Biao, thrilled to see him with Daniel. But when she notices Biao's equally cool behavior, she's puzzled and keeps pressing him about why his boss is being so cold with her friend. Biao, exasperated, finally admits that Daniel may act distant, but he genuinely cares for Fasai. This reassures Bifai, who senses that Daniel could be the right match for her friend. Later that day, Fasai arrives home to find a bouquet and a check for 100,000 baht labeled, "For my employee." Recognizing it's from Chinmin, she contacts him to return the check. Chinmin, excited, thinks she might accept his offer, but when they meet, he's disappointed to see her rejecting the money. He then asks her to visit his house so he can show her something important. When she hesitates, showing her apprehension, he reassures her, saying she'd be safer with him than with Daniel. He insists on her coming with him, promising that if she decides against working with him afterward, he won't push her again. Reluctantly, she agrees. Upon arrival at Chinmin's residence, she notices the house is heavily guarded. When she spots Tian Kong, her anxiety spikes, and she instinctively hides behind Chinmin, still afraid of him. Chinmin introduces her to his mentally ill brother, and as Fasai watches the men, Chinmin is reminded of Batan, his past love. A painful memory floods back, a time when Batan cried in front of him. Overcome, he suddenly hugs Fasai, calling her by Batan's name, leaving her terrified. She screams as Chinmin and Tian Kong pry his brother away. Realizing how shaken she is, Chinmin apologizes sincerely, regretful for what happened. When Fasai asks Chinmin who Batan was, he reveals that she was the person Yao despised most and that Fasai bears a striking resemblance to her. He explains that he brought her here to witness the impact of Daniel's betrayal on Yao. Once, he and Daniel were like brothers until Daniel turned on him, killed his father, and nearly took his brother's life. Though Chinmin managed to save his brother, the trauma left him in the fragile state she now sees. Fasai realizes the drawing he made in her notebook was meant to represent his father and brother, stirring her sympathy. However, she struggles to believe that Daniel could commit such an atrocity and asks if there's any proof. Chinmin admits he has no hard evidence but insists he's certain. Daniel's hunger for power makes him ruthless, and he claims Daniel even killed Batan to prove himself fit to lead the Golden Dragon Gang. He warns Fasai to keep her distance from Daniel to avoid the same fate as Batan. Shaken, Fasai confides in her friends, recounting everything she heard. Her friends are stunned, but Bifai immediately defends Daniel, insisting that Fasai decline Chinmin's job offer. However, when Fasai mentions her need for money, they suggest she weigh her options carefully, pledging their support whatever she chooses. B-Fi isn't pleased and takes matters into her own hands the next day, getting Daniel's number from the magazine company and calling him. Biao answers, and Fa-Sai tells him about her encounter with Chin-min and her intention to resign and work for him instead. When Biao relays this to Daniel, he feels a pang of regret but masks it with indifference, sticking to his decision not to interfere. He goes to the magazine to finalize the investment paperwork, hoping to maintain a stoic front. Meanwhile, after much deliberation, Fa-Sai texts Chin-min, apologizing and declining his offer. Furious, Chin-min storms out of his house in a rage. When Fa-Sai arrives at work, she's surprised to see Daniel still there, and her choice to stay at the magazine clearly lifts his spirits. Biao notices Daniel's joy and is quietly pleased for him. Daniel overhears the director discussing Fa-Sai's work and requests that she be the one to write and personally deliver the weekly content to him. Eager to please, the director quickly agrees. That night, Daniel and his men show up at Chin-min's nightclub, a place where the Golden Dragon Gang is strictly unwelcome. Despite the risk, Daniel's crew fights their way past Chin-min's White Tiger Gang and forces entry. Once inside, Daniel confronts Chin-min privately, voicing his frustration and accusing him of trying to manipulate him into a trap. He cautions Chin-min against involving an innocent girl in their feud, pleading with him not to use Fa-Sai as a pawn. Chin-min brushes off Daniel's appeal, finding it tiresome, and challenges him to a fight, proposing that if Daniel can take him down, he'll stop his games with Fa-Sai. Daniel accepts, and they hand over their weapons to fight hand-to-hand in front of their men. After a fierce struggle, Daniel manages to pin Chin-min, but instead of inflicting further harm, he releases him, holding him to his word. Just then, Tian Kong hurls a metal fist at Daniel, trying to ambush him. Chin-min intercepts the weapon and uses it to strike Daniel, rendering him unconscious. Enraged by the cheap shot, Biao and his men rush in to defend their leader. When Daniel regains consciousness, he finds himself in Biao's home with Biao by his side, visibly upset. Biao encourages him to turn over the gang's black book to the police as a warning to their enemies, but Daniel declines, assuring Biao that everyone will face their just fate in due time. Meanwhile, Fa-Sai contemplates what to write for the next issue, finally deciding on a theme of love with Valentine's Day around the corner. The following morning, she receives a bouquet at work from Chin-min, who includes a note saying he hasn't given up and is still waiting for her to join him. At work, Fa-Sai's manager calls her in, requesting that she deliver her latest article to Daniel's office for review. When she arrives, she's stunned to see him with a noticeable bruise on his face. Trying to be gentle, she asks what happened, but he dodges the question, making her feel out of place. Embarrassed, she apologizes and returns his jacket along with the necklace she carefully repaired, mentioning how much she thought they meant to him. Yet, instead of showing gratitude, he coldly instructs her to sit far from him while he works. Each time it seems he's free, she tries to discuss her article, but he keeps getting called away for other meetings, leaving her waiting in his office. After a long wait, Daniel finally returns, only to find Fa-Sai asleep at her seat. Smiling slightly, he takes a moment to look at the article she wrote. When she wakes up, she's embarrassed to realize she has been there, asleep, for over 3 hours. She wonders why he didn't wake her, and he responds simply that it's disrespectful to disturb someone's rest. Trying to get back on track, she begins discussing her article, but he dismisses her, saying he avoids work conversations after 5 p.m., it's his time to relax, and he likes to keep work separate from his personal life. Worried about returning to her manager without any feedback, she insists on hearing his opinion, only for Daniel to suggest, sarcastically, that she could just tell her manager she was sleeping instead of working. Feeling insulted and frustrated by his attitude, she storms out, wondering if she had misread him all along. Later, she calls B-Fi, who surprises her by revealing that Daniel approved her article as the main feature for the next issue. Overjoyed, Fa-Sai realizes she might have misjudged him. As she's about to leave, she unexpectedly runs into Daniel, who asks her to join him for a drive, saying he wants to talk. Grateful for his approval of her article, she agrees without hesitation. He takes her to a sophisticated restaurant, and over dinner, he asks if she's still considering Chin-min's job offer. Concerned, he warns her of the potential risks of working with him, explaining that Chin-min's brother needs a specialist, not her. He then praises her writing skills, saying she's irreplaceable at the magazine and that her article was flawless, as though he's speaking directly to her heart. Meanwhile, Fa-Sai's father, oblivious to her dinner with Daniel, spends his evening at one of Chin-min's nightclubs. When Chin-min spots him, he seizes the opportunity to use him as leverage to bring Fa-Sai to his side. He and Tian Kong devise a plan, intending to entrap her father without physical harm. As he unwinds, club girls approach Fa-Sai's father, slipping something into his drink and coaxing him to drink until he's visibly woozy. They cozy up to him until 2 men from the club snap photos of him with the girls. Following this, they lead him to Sidrak, a ruthless figure known for engaging in illegal dealings without loyalty to any gang. Sidrak, working independently but closely tied to Tian Kong, seizes the moment to extort Fa Sai's father. He threatens to send the compromising photos and footage to Fa Sai and her mother if he doesn't pay 1,000,000 baht. When Fa Sai's father realizes he's been set up, he strikes one of the scammers, enraging Sidrak, who retaliates fiercely. Just before Sidrak takes things too far, a member of the White Tiger gang intervenes, reminding him that Chin Min strictly ordered no harm to come to Fa Sai's father. As Fa Sai's father gathers his strength, he manages to push back against the young guard keeping an eye on him and escapes. Just then, Fa Sai arrives close to the nightclub, calling her father to check where he is. Desperate, he asks her to come to him quickly, though he can't say exactly where. Before he can get far, Sidrak catches up and starts beating him, but when Fa Sai sees the brutal attack, she rushes over, fearfully trying to pull Sidrak away. Sidrak turns, noticing Fa Sai's striking beauty, and makes a move to assault her in front of her father. Her scream catches Chin Min's attention as he arrives just in time, throwing Sidrak off and savagely beating him for not following orders. Seeing his daughter in danger breaks Fa Sai's father's spirit, and he collapses, unable to bear the pain. Chin Min immediately takes him to a private hospital owned by Kwan's family. Kwan herself oversees his case, and when she steps out of the room, she reassures Fa Sai and her mother that he's past the critical stage but needs urgent surgery. Shocked and devastated, Fa Sai and her mother worry about how they'll cover the expensive operation. Chen Min is visibly upset and storms off, taking his anger out on himself, while Tian Kong, his right-hand man, coolly suggests they use the situation to their advantage. He urges Chin Min to pressure Fa Sai to work with them, leveraging her father's predicament. The following morning, Chin Min approaches Fa Sai, offering to pay all her father's medical bills if she agrees to work for him. However, his conditions have changed. He now wants her to steal a specific book from Daniel, known as the Black Book. He explains that it contains the dark secrets of Daniel's empire, a record of illegal dealings that he claims Daniel stole after murdering his father. He warns that if she refuses, he'll expose Daniel's crimes to the police. Realizing the weight of the secrets the book holds, Fa Sai hesitates, torn between her loyalty to Daniel, who has saved her life more than once, and her need to help her father. When she refuses, Chin Min's frustration peaks. He insists he's the only one who can save her father now, practically demanding she pay him back. But Fa Sai, realizing he's likely responsible for her father's suffering, is horrified. She confronts him, asking how he could stoop so low and slaps him, expressing how deeply it pains her that he would use her father against her. Finally, she agrees to retrieve the book, not out of loyalty to Chin Min, but to protect her father and free Daniel from his grip, convinced that Chin Min is the one steeped in cruelty, not Daniel. After their tense exchange, she heads to the hospital to check on her father and is surprised to find Daniel already there. He's visiting as a concerned boss and friend, and when he gently asks who was behind the attack, she deflects, claiming it was just a group of random thugs they've already forgiven. With a pointed look, she subtly advises him to consider forgiveness, hinting that it could ease his own bitterness toward Chin Min. Daniel, however, is unmoved, telling her it's too late for peace between them. Realizing she must still get the Black Book to end the rivalry, Fa Sai feels the weight of her promise. As they talk, Daniel notices a shadowy figure approaching and realizes they're being watched. He barely has time to react before the man closes in, and they both instinctively pull out their weapons. Fa Sai gasps, recognizing the assailant as Teeb, a police officer and a longtime family friend who has harbored feelings for her but has never spoken of them. Teeb explains he came to check on her father and, upon seeing Daniel, immediately engages him, as the police are now investigating the rising mafia presence in the area. During the confrontation, Teeb makes it clear he's aware of Daniel's dealings, informing him that the police know about his pending alliance with Khaled, a powerful figure in the White Tiger gang. Fa Sai, disturbed by Daniel's willingness to ally with dangerous figures like Khaled, warns him that such actions will only worsen his feud with Chin Min. Unfazed, Daniel simply tells her that his partnership with Khaled promises high profits, unaware of how deeply Fa Sai's disappointment is cutting into her loyalty toward him. As Teeb interrupts their conversation to visit her father, Fa Sai decides not to bring up the book again with Daniel. She's lost hope of reconciling with him. Meanwhile, Bi-Fi and Naut make their way to the hospital to see Biao. While Bi-Fi is eager to greet him, Naut is uneasy around Daniel and his men, especially Biao, and expresses her desire to leave. Bi-Fi approaches Biao, questioning him about what he did to scare Naut, but as always, he brushes off her inquiry. Just then, a seriously ill patient passes by, and as Bi-Fi steps aside to let him through, she nearly loses her balance, expecting Biao to catch her. To her shock, instead of supporting her, he carelessly lets her fall to the ground. The patient's son rushes over, crying out for his father, and Biao, struck by the scene, gets lost in memories of his own father, tears streaming down his face. Bi, seeing how deeply affected he is, follows him, eager to understand his emotion. When Biao tells her to stay out of his business, she opens up, revealing her own painful past as an orphan. She explains that she lost her parents when she was 10, and after their death, she vowed to become beautiful and wealthy, hoping to shield her family from further sorrow. As Biao walks away, Bi attempts to stop him, but suddenly, and accidentally breaks her arm. Danny rushes over, apologizing, while Biao feels an overwhelming sense of guilt and promises to cover her medical expenses. Later that night, Fasai's father undergoes surgery, and when her mother asks about the money for the operation, Fasai lies, claiming she borrowed it from a colleague and plans to repay him in installments. Quan emerges from the operating room, reassuring them that the surgery was a success and that Fasai's father has passed the critical stage. Grateful, Fasai seeks to thank Quan, who tells her that if she truly wants to show her gratitude, she should stay away from Eat and stop bothering him. Quan hints that Eat has confided in her about Fasai's request to be taken somewhere, but Fasai doesn't want to deny it outright. Instead, she tells Quan that not everything she hears is true, and thanks her again, not just for saving her father, but for keeping Eat out of her life. Quan is taken aback, unable to fathom why Fasai would say such a thing. Nearby, Chen-min listens in on their conversation and approaches Fasai, pleased to see her maintaining her composure. However, when she urges him to do the same, he sits down with Daniel and warns her not to underestimate him, labeling Daniel a killer. He recounts how they recently expelled a young man named Shawa from their gang. Following that, Daniel had Shawa killed after he shot at Khaled, a mafia leader, igniting a bloody feud fueled by a tattoo Khaled despised. Fasai defends Daniel, claiming she has only heard of Khaled from him and believes their dealings are purely business-related. She doubts Chen-min's assertion that Daniel had anything to do with sending Shawa away. In response, Chen-min reassures her that he's not lying and is too wise to provoke someone as dangerous as Khaled. He pleads with her to help him retrieve the Black Book to protect his family's honor, promising that once he has it, he won't trouble Daniel again and will ensure it is returned quickly and easily. The following day, Fasai makes her way to Daniel's company, pretending to search for a lost pen she claims is of great value to her. As she discreetly scans the office for the Black Book, she comes up empty-handed. Daniel, puzzled by her odd behavior, urges her to stop searching, explaining that if the book were there, the maid would have already returned it to him. Before she leaves, he asks her to wait until he finishes his work and offers her a ride home, which she accepts. As they drive, Fasai continues her search for the book but finds nothing. Suddenly, chaos erupts when two armed men appear and start firing at them. Biao leaps out of the car to chase after the attackers, but Daniel quickly pulls him back, concerned for his safety. Instead, he decides to take Fasai to his house. Fasai can't shake off thoughts of Chen-min and realizes he orchestrated the attack to push her into Daniel's home to search for the book. Upon arriving, they meet the house manager, and Daniel instructs her to keep an eye on Fasai. Just then, Fasai receives a message directing her to search Daniel's room for the book. She cleverly asks Daniel where the bathroom is, and as soon as she enters, she receives a call from Chen-min. Anxiety fills her as she contemplates searching Daniel's room, feeling more like she's in a mafia leader's lair than a welcoming home. Recognizing the house manager's poor memory, she plans to use this to her advantage if she feels threatened. When she exits the bathroom, she notices Daniel is busy with a guest and his men are gathered around him. Seizing the moment, she slips into his room and resumes her search for the book. Meanwhile, Daniel finishes his meeting and asks the house manager about Fasai. She tells him she's in the garden. As Daniel decides to go to his room to change, Fasai senses his presence nearby and doesn't know what to do. In a panic, she hides, clutching a large book tightly, feeling increasingly frightened. Just then, Daniel walks in, changing clothes in front of her, causing her to blush and accidentally bump into the book. Hearing the commotion, Daniel heads over to investigate. Luckily, Biao arrives and calls Daniel over, eager to show him something outside, the presence of Chen-min, who is lurking near the mansion. Biao believes Chen-min is watching them and wants to confront him, but Daniel stops him. As Fasai tries to escape back to her previous hiding spot, she overhears Biao telling Daniel that he's investigating the person who shot at Khaled and discovered he was formerly part of the White Tiger gang. Biao suspects Chen-min is behind the attack to frame them and advises Daniel to meet with him to clear things up. Relieved to learn that Daniel isn't involved, Fasai hurries downstairs, but Daniel's driver spots her. When Daniel hears his driver talking to her, he rushes out, worried about what she's doing there. In her anxious state, combined with the bump from the book, Fasai's nose starts bleeding. Daniel, alarmed by her condition, carries her into his room, believing she's unwell, and begins to tend to her injuries. After checking on her and ensuring she's alright, he questions why she was upstairs. Fasai recalls the house manager's weak memory and lies, telling Daniel that the manager had sent her to use the upstairs bathroom since the downstairs one had no water. As she prepares to leave, she hugs the house manager, feeling a twinge of guilt for deceiving her. When Fasai reunites with her friends, she shares that she visited Daniel's house searching for the book but didn't manage to find it. However, she did uncover something crucial: Daniel isn't involved in Chinmin's troubles. This revelation sparks suspicion among her friends, who begin to speculate that someone is deliberately trying to sow discord between the two gangs to prolong the conflict. Nut, who has a deep fear and dislike for Biao, is the first to express her doubts about him. The following morning, as Daniel heads to the magazine office, Bifai keeps a watchful eye on Biao. When Biao notices her presence, he threatens her, warning her to stay away. Bifai seizes the moment to draw attention to herself, and when Biao inquires about her actions, she reveals that she wants him to take responsibility for what he did to her hands. However, upon seeing his weapon, she admits to feeling scared. Daniel, curious about how he should take responsibility, listens as Bifai explains she has a lot of work today and will be there late, asking him for a ride home since her hands are too injured to drive. Daniel agrees and instructs Biao to stay with her. Biao, however, refuses, claiming he wouldn't feel safe away from Daniel. Daniel reassures him that he won't be very active today because he intends to check on Fasai's father. After Daniel leaves, Fasai's manager notices his interest in her and approaches him with a proposal. She suggests that Daniel become a spokesperson for their magazine, believing his good looks would attract more buyers. She recalls having previously offered him this opportunity, which he declined, but insists that if she approaches him again, he will agree. In return, she promises to feature one of her stories on the magazine's front page. That night, when Daniel visits Fasai's father at home, Eat unexpectedly walks in. Fasai's father is harsh with Eat, holding a grudge for his betrayal of Fasai. From their tense exchange, Daniel picks up that Eat once loved Fasai but left her to marry a wealthy woman. Despite the verbal onslaught from her father, Eat remains unfazed and continues to sit there, revealing to Daniel that he is now Fasai's boss. When Fasai's father starts feeling unwell, he excuses himself to rest, and Fasai, along with her mother, accompanies him. Eat, filled with jealousy toward Daniel, asks if he has bought the magazine that Fasai works for. Daniel clarifies that he is merely an investor. Eat attempts to insinuate that he and Fasai share a close relationship, noting it's strange that Fasai never mentioned him to Daniel. Daniel coolly replies that their communication ceased some time ago. Daniel then thanks Eat, saying that it was thanks to him that he met Fasai and fell in love with her at first sight, asking Eat to keep this confession confidential. Meanwhile, Biao waits for Bifai to finish her work. Although she wraps up early, she has nothing to occupy her time but to glare at him, purposely delaying her approach to annoy him. However, when she notices him on the phone, she rushes to eavesdrop but fails to glean any information. After Daniel drops her off at home, she finds Nut waiting for her. The two decide to follow Biao, and as they arrive at a certain location, they see Biao meeting with two other gang members, who are setting a trap for Chinmin, lying in wait for him to pass by. When Chinmin arrives, they ambush him and start to beat him up. Nut and Bifai, taken aback by the violent scene, quickly send a message to Fasai, reporting what they've witnessed. At that moment, Eat is leaving, and when Daniel sees a message pop up on Fasai's phone, he reads it. Just as Fasai approaches him, he asks about her friends. Meanwhile, Biao continues to rough up Chinmin, who, instead of backing down, mocks Biao, taunting him for his perceived weakness. Frustrated with Chinmin's defiance, Biao decides to throw him off a high ledge. Just as he prepares to do so, Daniel arrives with Fasai by his side. Upon seeing Daniel, despite Daniel's desire, Biao throws him down to the ground. Daniel then takes both Chinmin and the girls back to his house, scolding Biao for his reckless actions. Fasai is taken aback when she witnesses Daniel slap Biao. Biao explains that he could no longer endure Chinmin's relentless attacks and revenge. Daniel counters that sometimes endurance is necessary, and Biao retorts, questioning how long they must tolerate such behavior. Daniel's frustration grows as he admonishes Biao to control his anger and desire for vengeance. He emphasizes that it's not shameful to be like water that extinguishes fire, allowing hatred to dominate his thoughts will lead to his downfall. When Biao checks on Chinmin, he finds him still unconscious while Bifai and her friends tend to him. Bifai apologizes for the trouble her group has caused between Biao and Daniel. Biao warns her that if anyone else had done what she did, he would have killed them by now. Fasai, trying to lighten the mood, quips that if someone overheard his words, they might think he's a savage, but she believes he's truly kind. Bifai points out that Biao had deliberately aimed to throw Chinmin somewhere safe, indicating that he didn't want him dead. Biao clarifies that his actions toward Chinmin were meant to intimidate him into ceasing his harassment of Daniel. Fasai is surprised to hear about Biao's strong affection for Daniel, prompting him to confess that his feelings don't compare to what Daniel has done for him. He reveals that he, Daniel, and Chinmin were once close friends and that he is actually Chinmin's biological cousin. One day, while visiting Chinmin's home, Biao's father storms down the stairs, furious, and takes Biao aside. Concerned, Biao asks what's wrong, only to discover that Uncle Hao, Chinmin's father, has demanded that Biao step down from his position as leader of the White Tiger gang. Biao believes Yao is behind the threats against him, as he's far worse than his own father. Biao's father insists he won't relinquish his leadership, wanting to pass it on to Biao. However, Biao seems indifferent to the position, focused instead on his passion for music and playing the guitar. Things escalate when Hao, accompanied by Yao, Tian Kong, and several henchmen, attacks Biao's father's house, demanding he step down. When Biao's father refuses, Yao starts brutally assaulting his wife and murders Biao's men. Upon arriving and hearing the gunfire, Biao finds Yao in a frenzied rage, killing his mother right before his eyes. In a fit of madness, Hao threatens Biao's father, declaring that if he doesn't resign, he will kill his son. Biao's father, a resolute man, stands firm against Hao's threats, vowing that he will never yield to someone as evil as him. He warns that the horrific deeds Hao is committing will eventually come back to haunt him. Biao is helpless as two men restrain him, unable to save his parents from their gruesome fate. In a final act of revenge for his brother's defiance, Hao sets Biao ablaze. Witnessing the brutal deaths of his parents sends Biao spiraling into insanity. In his turmoil, Biao escapes from Eat, seizes a gun from one of the assailants, and begins to shoot as he runs away, contemplating ending his own life. But Daniel, relentless in his search, eventually finds him and attempts to calm him down. He reminds Biao that dying is not the answer, assuring him that if his parents were alive, they would never wish for his demise, they would want him to live a happy life. He urges Biao to join his gang, promising mutual support and camaraderie. At that moment, Biao tattoos the Golden Dragon Gang symbol onto his body, marking his allegiance to his new life. However, Daniel intervenes, stopping him from removing the White Tiger Gang symbol. He insists that Biao should always remember who he is and where he came from. Fasai watches the exchange, finally understanding why Biao has two tattoos. She mentions that Bifai had informed her, adding that they don't keep secrets from one another. Biao tells Fasai that secrets don't exist in the world, and he's aware of her alliance with Chinmin. He reveals that he witnessed her agreeing to work with Chinmin in the hospital, even capturing a picture of the moment. Fasai tries to justify her actions, explaining that she only did it to protect her father. However, Biao insists that even when faced with difficult choices, people can choose differently. He believes that her sadness clouded her judgment, leading her down the wrong path. Biao assures her that he won't expose her betrayal, not for her sake, but for his own. He refuses to allow her to locate the Black Book. Before leaving, Biao warns Fasai that if Daniel ever considers attacking Chinmin, Chinmin wouldn't be alive to worry about it. He stresses that Daniel's actions are all meant to protect him. Meanwhile, Daniel is checking on Chinmin, who is still unconscious and plans to leave a weapon next to him. Once Chinmin wakes up, he misinterprets Daniel's intentions, believing he is there to kill him. In a panic, he punches Daniel and grabs the weapon. Just as he's about to shoot, he discovers that the gun is unloaded, as Daniel had removed the bullets, anticipating Chinmin's reaction. The two engage in a heated fight, and Fasai rushes in to intervene. However, Chinmin grabs a nearby glass bottle and threatens to use it against her as a shield for his escape. Daniel remains calm, assuring Chinmin that he doesn't need to resort to violence because he intended to take him home after he rested. Chinmin remains skeptical, increasing the tension in the room until Fasai intervenes again, asking Daniel's men to lower their weapons. She decides to go with Chinmin willingly, knowing that Daniel trusts him not to harm her. Once at Chinmin's house, Chinmin orders his men to take Fasai home, but he soon starts feeling unwell. Instead of leaving, Fasai decides to stay and prepares food for him, hoping to soothe his unease. She tries to calm Chinmin, reassuring him that Daniel genuinely cares about him and insisting that he wasn't the one responsible for framing him in the shooting incident involving Khaled. Fasai believes someone is trying to drive a wedge between them. Chinmin becomes agitated by her words and suddenly strikes her hard, which prompts Fasai to retaliate. He continues to provoke her, claiming he will prove himself better than Daniel to win her support. Before he can inflict further harm, Fasai pleads with him to stop. When he gazes at her intensely, frustration wells up within him, and he pulls away. Fasai expresses a desire for Daniel to make a mistake or express a wish for revenge against Chinmin so that they could team up to bring him down. But that never happens. Daniel never mentions Chinmin's name. She shares that she uses her heart to gauge people, which is why she believes Daniel is a good person, just as she believes Chinmin is. She tells him that the losses in his life have pushed him to the edge, and if he can't accept what has happened, he risks losing everything and ending up alone. As she prepares to leave for home, Daniel watches her from his car, ensuring she arrives safely. Meanwhile, we see Quan deep in thought about Fasai's words, specifically, that not everything Eat says is the truth. While out to eat, she presses him to confess what he's hiding. Nervous, he eventually reveals that he visited Fasai's father but didn't mention it to her to avoid causing distress. As he observes the change in her expression, he realizes he has encountered Fasai's new boyfriend, whom her family genuinely likes. He describes this guy as wealthy and handsome, the main contributor to the magazine where Fasai works. He reassures her that she won't look at him again, convincing himself that no one would choose a poor doctor like him over a rich man. Kwon, fueled by jealousy and greed, spends the entire night scouring through Daniel's photos, her face lighting up with a wide smile. The next day, she encounters a girl from the magazine who doesn't particularly like Fasai. Kwon incessantly questioned Nodi about Daniel, recalling that the magazine's manager urged Fasai to speak with him about becoming their spokesperson. When Fasai mentions she hasn't had the chance to talk to him yet, her manager becomes frustrated, insisting that she should reach out immediately since the company is facing difficulties. While hanging out with her friends, Fasai is interrupted by Nodi, who bluntly asks if it's true that she's dating Daniel, given the rumors swirling around. Fasai denies it and inquires about the source of the gossip. Nodi dismisses her concerns, claiming she already addressed the rumor on Fasai's behalf, asserting that Daniel would never be interested in someone like her, especially a girl abandoned by a man like Eat, who left her to propose to Kwon. As Bifai, witnessing the bullying aimed at her friend, reprimands them, leading to a heated confrontation. Fasai realizes that Eat must have mentioned her to Kwon to reassure her that he wouldn't pursue her again. Later that night, Chenmin wakes up, startled and feverish, haunted by memories of Daniel caring for him during his past illnesses. A smile creeps across his face at the recollection, but it quickly fades as he remembers Fasai's warning about someone trying to create division between them. He frantically calls Tian Kong to discuss what Fasai said, and Tian Kong warns him against trusting her, reigniting Chenmin's resentment toward Daniel. Once the call ends, Tian Kong reaches out to Sidrak, ordering him to send his men to eliminate Fasai and her friends. Meanwhile, Fasai practices her pitch to persuade Daniel to be the magazine's face when she suddenly senses someone watching her. Stepping outside with an umbrella, she spots a masked man lurking in the shadows, a knife in hand. Just as the masked man raises his weapon to strike, her mother calls out, informing her that Daniel is with her. Upon arriving, Daniel spots the masked attacker and chases him down, but the assailant manages to escape, leaving his knife behind. Elsewhere, Nude feels a surge of fear when someone grabs her hand, only to discover it's Officer Teeb, a mutual friend. She invites him into her apartment, only to be shocked by the sight of her home in complete disarray, as if someone had broken in. Panicking, Nude calls Bifai to alert her and ensure her safety. Just as Bifai picks up the call, a kidnapper seizes her, cutting the line abruptly. Instead of succumbing to panic, Bifai remains composed, negotiating with her captors for her release, surprising them with her calm demeanor. Suddenly, a car approaches. It's Biao. Relief washes over Bifai as he jumps out and fights off her captors. Unfortunately, he runs out of bullets, leaving them no choice but to jump off a nearby bridge into the water to escape to safety. Bifai asks Biao how he knew she was in danger, and he explains that Daniel had requested him to find her after both Nude and Bifai were attacked. Grateful, she thanks him, but Biao coolly reminds her that they're now even. He removes his jacket and drapes it over her shoulders, a chivalrous gesture that touches her heart, leading her to realize she's fallen for him. Meanwhile, Daniel reassures Fasai's family, promising to leave his men to guard their home overnight so he can rest easy. Fasai's father notices Daniel's growing affection for his daughter and feels pleased, hoping that this means Daniel will eventually marry her. He believes Daniel is a good match and that Fasai would be safe in his care. However, Fasai's mother remains cautious, worrying that Daniel's past and the men around him could endanger her daughter. When she inquires about Daniel's work, Fasai lies, claiming he's merely a successful businessman. The following day, Teeb visits Daniel's house, his expression serious as he delivers the news that Nude and her friends were attacked the previous night. Daniel, already aware of the situation, responds nonchalantly, which only fuels Teeb's jealousy. Sensing Teeb's underlying feelings for Fasai, Daniel dismisses his concern, stating that he was at Fasai's house following traditional Thai customs for proposing. Teeb, still skeptical, presses further, questioning whether Fasai's family knows Daniel is the head of a foreign mafia and that their daughter's safety is compromised because of him. Biao steps in to defend Daniel, firmly warning Teeb not to cast accusations at his boss, emphasizing that no one cares for Fasai more than Daniel does. Teeb retorts that if Daniel truly cares for her, he should leave her life for good. Daniel, unyielding, reassures him that he will stay and protect her in his own way. Soon after, Daniel travels to Hong Kong, where his mother greets him with joy, curious about his sudden return. He explains he's back to handle something for Fasai. However, his father disapproves of Daniel's involvement with her, seeing her as a significant threat to their gang's interests. He hints at growing concerns regarding Bhutan, but Daniel, irritated by his father's controlling nature, declares that Fasai's safety will now be his priority. He firmly asserts that she is unlike anyone else and poses no danger to him. As he heads to his room, he notices a man with a strange tattoo on his neck among his father's associates, a man his father seems to be keeping an eye on. Meanwhile, back in Thailand, Chinmin finds himself lost in thoughts of Fasai, a smile spreading across his face as he recalls their moments together, convinced their feelings are mutual. The next day, he visits her home, arriving with an array of skincare products and gifts for Fasai's mother, charming her more than Daniel ever has. Afterward, Fasai pulls him aside, curious about his sudden interest in her mother. Chinmin candidly admits he's trying to win her over, confessing that he discovered his true feelings for Fasai after their intimate night together, emotions he's never felt for anyone else. Fasai, slightly embarrassed, informs him that she doesn't reciprocate those feelings. Undeterred, Chinmin reassures her that he's in no rush and will patiently wait for her to fall in love with him. Suddenly, Chinmin spots Daniel's car nearby. Unable to stand being around her any longer, he urges Fasai to quickly bring him the black book. He then confronts Daniel, boldly declaring his love for Fasai and stating he's prepared to fight for her. Daniel, though angered, tries to remain composed and pulls Fasai aside to ask if Chinmin has crossed any lines. She reassures him that Chinmin hasn't done anything inappropriate, but Daniel informs her that Chinmin has confessed his feelings for her. When Fasai brushes it off as a joke, Daniel insists that Chinmin isn't joking about love. He explains that Chinmin has never been bold enough to express his feelings for Bhutan but has dared to do so with her. Fasai innocently tells Daniel she doesn't have feelings for Chinmin, which fills him with relief. In that moment, Daniel presents her with a gift he specifically traveled to Hong Kong for, a bracelet shaped like a golden dragon. He explains that the bracelet symbolizes his gang and represents him, vowing it will keep her safe. He asks her to promise never to take it off, and she agrees but requests something in return. Daniel, eager to please, assures her he'll get her anything she desires, as long as her request isn't for the moon and stars. Feeling emboldened, she asks him to be the cover model for her magazine, and he readily agrees. When her boss learns of Daniel's commitment, he's ecstatic, promising to feature her story on the magazine's front page as he previously vowed. Bi then has a brilliant idea and suggests they feature a couple alongside Daniel, considering the magazine's love-themed issue. She proposes Fasai as the female model, but Nude interjects, asserting that while Fasai's idea is good, it could be even better with a wealthy, famous figure. This would attract more readers and boost sales. Impressed by the suggestion, the boss becomes even more enthusiastic when Nude reveals she has a specific model in mind who would readily participate, Quan. Nodi promptly contacts Quan, who eagerly agrees to join the shoot. Quan's father overhears their conversation and asks who Daniel is. With excitement, she explains that Daniel is the ideal man for her. Quan's father, puzzled by her enthusiasm for Daniel, questions her feeling. She reminds him of his advice to choose the best, asserting that, to her, Daniel is exactly that. Concerned, her father warns her not to rush into things, suggesting she doesn't know Daniel well enough and that he might already have a girlfriend. Confidently, Quan responds that Daniel's current girlfriend doesn't stand a chance against her. She believes she excels in every way and is certain he will choose her over anyone else. The following day, Daniel arrives at the magazine's photoshoot venue, accompanied by his men. His eyes immediately search for Fasai, who is busy distributing food her mother prepared to her colleagues. His heart swells when he sees her wearing the bracelet he gifted her, but her mood shifts as Quan arrives, flaunting the food she brought for the crew. Nodi and her friend gleefully toss aside Fasai's food, attempting to embarrass her. Yet, Bi, always the protector, steps in to defend Fasai, teasing Quan and her friend. The magazine editor then introduces Quan to Daniel, but he remains oblivious, fixated solely on Fasai. As Quan attempts to charm Daniel from the moment they meet, Fasai feels a wave of jealousy wash over her, fearing that Quan might win Daniel's affection. Feeling overwhelmed, she leaves the group, but Daniel follows her, while Quan seethes with frustration at their interaction, especially when Daniel gently adjusts Fasai's bracelet, urging her to be careful with it. He playfully asks for some of the food she brought, filling her with joy that he chose her offering over Quan's. Meanwhile, Bi takes a break from her duties to secretly snap photos of Biao from a distance. He senses her presence and approaches, teasing her about being a spy. She laughs it off, claiming she's merely admiring him from afar. However, instead of being flattered, Biao warns her to stay out of his business. Just as he's about to leave, they spot a snake, startling them both. When Bi realizes it's just a toy, she teases Biao, questioning how a mafia member can be so easily frightened. He retorts that even those in the mafia are human, to which she replies that if he's human, he should learn to laugh, even if just once. Biao insists he has no time for laughter, stating that his primary concern is to protect his boss. Bi interrupts, urging him not to hide behind his work as an excuse, and she shares her own struggles with loneliness. She confides that her sadness once drove everyone away, and she doesn't want him to endure the same fate. Encouraging him to smile, she adds that it would make him as handsome as Daniel. Her heartfelt words resonate with him, but he coolly responds that if she truly wants him to be happy, she should stay away from him, turning to walk away. Despite his cold demeanor, Biao halts in front of a car window, attempting to practice his smile. Nude, spotting him in the reflection, assumes he's lost his mind and rushes to inform Bi, who is thrilled to know her words have touched Biao's heart. She resolves to help him heal from his sorrows and embrace his feelings for her. Back at the photo shoot, Quan calls Fasai over to help her with her shoes. Fasai recognizes that Quan is doing this to humiliate her but obliges nonetheless. Quan inquires why Daniel gave her the bracelet, and Fasai lies, saying Daniel brought gifts for everyone in the office from his trip to Hong Kong. Quan laughs, describing Daniel as charming, remarking that his thoughtfulness could make any woman obsessed with him believe he has fallen for her. She slyly asks Fasai if their office has any such obsessed woman, and when Fasai insists there isn't, Quan smirks, stating she won't worry about visiting the office with Daniel then. Puzzled, Fasai warns Quan that Eat would be unhappy to hear this, explaining she doesn't want him to suffer the same heartbreak she endured, as betrayal is a painful experience. Quan dismissively suggests that since Fasai cares so much, she can look after Eat because Quan won't be available for him anymore. Fasai realizes this means Quan intends to break up with Eat and pursue Daniel instead. As the photo shoot commences, Fasai feels a deep hurt seeing Quan cling to Daniel. Despite this, Daniel remains indifferent to Quan's advances, his gaze focused on Fasai, offering her warm smiles. However, blinded by jealousy, Fasai fails to notice his affection and walks away. Nude and Bi intercept her, urging her to stand her ground and not let Quan steal Daniel away. But feeling insecure, Fasai laments that she has nothing compared to Quan that would catch Daniel's attention. Defeated, she leaves, only to be called to the parking area shortly after, with someone claiming her boss wants to see her. Yet, as she steps outside, a shadowy figure sneaks up and grabs her. After the photo shoot wraps up, Quan tries to get Daniel to drive her home, saying she'd be too scared to drive alone at night. Being the gentleman he is, he agrees, but just as they're about to leave, Nut rushes in, visibly distressed, telling Daniel she can't find Fasai anywhere and is really worried about her. Without a second thought, Daniel quickly abandons his plans with Quan, taking his men along to search for Fasai. Meanwhile, Fasai, who has been unconscious, comes to and realizes she's been abducted. Terrified, she tries to escape, but her masked captor knocks her back down and drags her to another spot, ready to kill her. Just as he's about to pull the trigger, Daniel and his men arrive and intervene, saving her just in time. However, the masked man, highly trained, manages to escape. Observing his fighting style, Biao tells Daniel he suspects that the kidnapper is someone close to them. Daniel then asks Fasai for a bracelet, and she realizes it contained a tracking device, explaining how Daniel managed to find her so quickly. When Daniel analyzes the bracelet, he discovers it also had a hidden camera, and through it, he sees a tattoo on the kidnapper's neck, the same tattoo on the neck of his father's guard. Daniel immediately calls his father, asking if he's behind the attack. His father doesn't deny it, reminding Daniel that he'd previously warned him to stay away from Fasai. Daniel's father, Juan, explains that love is a weakness, and they can't afford weaknesses in their world. Though he won't prevent Daniel from being with someone, he insists that Daniel should choose someone trustworthy who won't endanger their organization, unlike Fasai. Furious, Daniel lashes out at his father, accusing him of justifying Fasai's near death to protect the family. He reminds him that he alone is responsible for the organization's protection and that no one has the right to harm Fasai. Back at work, Nodi and her friend mock Fasai, claiming she faked the whole kidnapping for attention. Bi, as usual, defends Fasai, leading to an argument. Quan also steps in, implying that Fasai has caused enough trouble. However, they all fall silent when Daniel enters, still visibly concerned for Fasai. Quan quickly puts on a friendly front, suggesting Fasai should go to the hospital for a checkup. When Daniel offers to take her, Quan pretends to be understanding, saying she wouldn't mind if he took Fasai to a nearby hospital on the way to her place. Daniel, however, declines her request, saying he's prioritizing Fasai's well-being. Then, in front of everyone, he holds Fasai's hand and leaves, making her friends overjoyed and Quan furious. Once Quan is alone, Bi approaches her and hints that she sees through her schemes. She warns Quan that not all men are the same, as some are actually loyal and beyond her reach. But Quan, undeterred, admits she loves a good challenge and that the harder it is, the more she wants to win. Although she hides it, Quan is clearly fuming as she walks away. Meanwhile, Fasai is shocked to find that Daniel has brought her to his countryside home and suggests she stay with him until the following day. Nervous, she insists her parents would worry, so he reassures her that he'll call and inform them, even promising nothing will happen to her under his roof. Sensing his frustration, Fasai asks if he's still upset about her kidnapping. Daniel, however, struggles to reveal the truth about his father's involvement. Instead, he asks her to forgive the men who hurt her, saying he knows this person well and that he only did it because of him. Fossey agrees to forgive and asks Daniel to do the same, hoping he can avoid any more fights, as she fears something bad might happen to him. Elsewhere, Thip discovers that Cedric was behind the attack on Fossey and her friends, so he confronts Cedric, demanding to know who hired him. Scared, Cedric confesses that a foreign mafia group ordered him to carry out the attack. Thip wonders aloud if he means Daniel's gang, then leaves. Paranoid, Cedric sends his men to follow Thip and kill him to prevent him from sharing his confession with Tian Kong. Cedric's men ambush Thip and open fire on him, but just in time, Biao arrives by chance, having just dropped off Bifai and her friends, and helps Thip out of the dangerous situation. Before Thip can express his gratitude, he accuses Biao and his gang of being involved in the attack on the girls, but Bifai intervenes, defending Biao, and tells Thip there's no way they'd do such a thing. Surprised, Thip tells them he's received information that a foreign mafia hired a man named Cedric to kill Fossey. Hearing this, Biao grows suspicious of the White Tiger gang. Frustrated, he calls Chinmin, accusing him of stooping so low as to go after defenseless women. When Chinmin denies any involvement, Biao shares what he heard from Thip, advising Chinmin to keep a closer eye on his men since they're out of control. If Daniel finds out, he'll destroy them all. Daniel, meanwhile, is struggling with his father's words about Baton's betrayal. As he drinks alone, Fossey goes to check on him, surprised to find him in such a state. When she tries to comfort him, he suddenly asks if she could ever betray him. Caught off guard, Fossey hesitates, unsure how to respond. As she helps him to his room, he collapses beside her and begs her to promise she'll never betray him. Seeing the pain in his eyes, Fossey can't resist and vows that she'll never betray him. Daniel then confesses his love to her before falling asleep. The next morning, Fossey wakes up in her bed to find Daniel smiling at her from nearby. When she asks how she got there, he admits he carried her and hands her a bag, explaining that he had his men bring her clothes. He then places the bracelet back on her wrist, assuring her that he removed the hidden camera. He reveals that the bracelet's dragon eyes are made of red beans, which symbolize love and longing in his culture. He tells her to think of him whenever she looks at it, confessing that he's loved her since they first met in Japan and could never forget her. Touched, Fossey confesses her love for him as well. Soon after, Fossey receives a video message from an unknown number. When she opens it, she's horrified to see Tian Kong filming her mother asleep at home. He threatens to kill her mother and Fossey herself unless she retrieves the black book from Daniel and warns her not to tell him. Terrified for her family, Fossey calls home, relieved when her father answers. He checks on her mother, who is asleep on the living room couch. Although her mother remembers feeling like something strange happened, she dismisses it as a dream. Despite her relief, Fossey is still anxious, unsure how to protect her family. When Daniel comes in with breakfast, he tells her he'll take her somewhere afterward. The place turns out to be Baton's grave. Daniel wanted to introduce Fossey to Baton and tells her how Baton had always wanted him to leave the mafia life and live in peace, a dream he hasn't been able to fulfill. He explains that this spot was one of her favorites. Curious, Fossey asks what happened to Baton. Daniel reveals that he killed her after discovering she was betraying their gang by leaking information to the White Tiger gang. As he recalls, Baton admitted her betrayal wasn't under pressure but for money, hoping to escape far away from the world of gangs and violence. When he asked if she loved him, she confessed that she did and was willing to face punishment for her betrayal. Daniel had then devised a plan to fake her death, intending to help her escape. He planned to give her a bulletproof vest to wear during her execution, hoping she could pretend to die and fall into the water where Biao would be waiting to help her escape. But on the day of her punishment, she had left a note saying she wanted to take responsibility for her mistakes and begged him not to blame himself, urging him to be strong and forgive his enemies. Despite her words, Daniel was devastated. He had isolated himself, refusing to see anyone or speak to anyone for a long time. Fossey comforts him, suggesting that maybe Baton had her own reasons and that it's wrong to judge her so harshly. Daniel insists that there should be no secrets between people who love each other, asking Fossey not to hide anything from him. She hesitantly agrees, but then he receives a phone call. Fossey overhears him confirming to the caller that the black book is safe and plans to check on it himself. After the call, Daniel asks Fossey to wait in the car. However, Fossey secretly follows him and watches him retrieve the black book from Baton's grave. She hurries back to the car before Daniel notices her. At the same time, Biao arrives at Bifai's house, explaining that his boss ordered him to watch over her for her own safety. Daniel later returns to the countryside house with the book, telling Fossey he has important work to finish and will return soon. As soon as he leaves, Fossey sneaks off to Baton's grave to retrieve the book. On her way, she calls Bifai, who tries to dissuade her, but Fossey insists, fearful for her family's safety. Overhearing their conversation, Biao realizes they're discussing the book and pressures Bifai to tell him what Fasai is up to. When Bifai explains everything to Biao, he's shocked. Meanwhile, Fasai finally reaches the book, only to get a call from Bifai, who warns her that what she's seeing isn't the real black book. Ignoring the warning, Fasai opens it and finds it blank, just as Daniel arrives, revealing he had staged this to test her loyalty. Daniel recalls how his father had warned him about her intentions and her connection with Chinmin, accusing her of trying to steal the black book. Despite his father's skepticism, Daniel was hurt and felt betrayed once more. He leaves her behind, but Fasai chases after him, pleading through her tears for him to listen. Daniel stops, admitting he knows Chinmin threatened her and understands her fear, but he's disappointed she didn't trust him enough to be honest. He acknowledges her bravery for risking her life to protect her family, but since she lacks trust in him, he can't fully trust her either. When he tries to walk away, she clings to him, begging him not to leave and confessing her deep love for him. Daniel pulls away, admitting he loves her too, but insists they can't continue like this. At that moment, Chinmin arrives, infuriated to see Fasai in tears, and attacks Daniel, thinking he hurt her. Fasai quickly steps between them, stopping the fight, and walks away. Chinmin follows, and she confronts him, blaming him for the misunderstanding with Daniel. When Chinmin asks what he did, she shows him the video message and explains Tian Kong's threats. Heartbroken, she tells Chinmin she won't work with him anymore. Chinmin swears he had no idea, and as she starts to leave, he grabs her hand and asks to take her home. She agrees, and instead of driving her home, he stops at a bridge, helping soothe her swollen eyes with a cold compress. Chinmin then sincerely apologizes, professing that he would never hurt her because he genuinely cares for her. She forgives him, and he expresses that he doesn't want to pressure her into a relationship but hopes they can remain friends. Fasai agrees, not wanting to upset him. Later, Chinmin confronts Tian Kong, enraged over his actions. Tian defends himself, explaining that he acted out of necessity to protect their interests. Chinmin warns him never to act without permission again, threatening to kill him if he disobeys. When Chinmin asks if Tian Kong was also responsible for the recent attempts on Fasai's life, Tian Kong denies it. Chinmin instructs him to find out who was behind the attack. Meanwhile, Wang celebrates Fasai's departure from his son, though Daniel's mother is upset, aware that her husband orchestrated Tian Kong's threats. She confronts him, accusing him of being heartless. When Biao tries to soften Daniel's feelings toward Fasai, Daniel realizes Biao knew about her being Chinmin's spy. Biao suggests they return the black book and put an end to all this, but Daniel refuses, asserting that it's Chinmin's only leverage, and without it, the White Tiger Gang's enemies would kill him. The next day, Quan gets Daniel's number from the magazine editor and calls him, hoping to charm him into liking her. After hanging up, she meets Eat, announcing her decision to break up. When he demands an explanation, she claims she's found someone better suited for her. Upset, Eat insists he chose her because she was better than Fasai. She warns him not to stand in her way, or he'll lose his job at her father's hospital. Meanwhile, Tian Kong captures the blonde hitman who attempted to kill Fasai. When Chinmin interrogates him, the hitman initially refuses to reveal anything. Chinmin, however, threatens to cut off his hand if he doesn't talk. Terrified, the hitman confesses that Wang was behind it. Chinmin leaves him to his men, walking away in anger. Daniel, back at his estate, welcomes his visiting family from Hong Kong. Their reunion is interrupted by the hitman's scream. Rushing down, they find him lying on the ground, his hand severed. Daniel immediately suspects the White Tiger Gang and worries Chinmin will tell Fasai about his father's actions. The next day, Chinmin visits Fasai at the magazine to see her but runs into Bifai and not first. He assures them he had no idea about his men's actions and promises not to hurt them again. To make up for it, knowing that Bifai has feelings for Biao, he hands her a photo of Biao. Later, Chinmin finds Fasai crying and tries to comfort her. Meanwhile, Not enters, informing her that the editor needs her to deliver some information to the clothing store overseeing their event. At the same time, Daniel and his father are in their office, where they are interrupted by Quan, who, impressed by Daniel's background, invites him to lunch. Wang is thrilled and insists he join her. Shortly after, Not calls Quan to let her know that Bifai is currently at the boutique, selecting the dress she'll wear for the magazine event, suggesting Quan go if she's available. Seeing an opportunity, Quan decides to take Daniel with her to the boutique, hoping to provoke Fasai. Daniel agrees, but he's taken aback upon arriving to find Fasai already there with Chinmin, who's helping her pick a dress and joking around to cheer her up. Quan calls out to Fasai, bragging about her lunch with Daniel and mentioning that Not had called her over. Filled with jealousy, Daniel pretends to get closer to Quan to get back at Fasai. Noticing Daniel alone later, Chinmin approaches him and thanks him for staying away from Fasai, as it's allowed him to grow closer to her. Chen-min adds that he knows about Wang's attempt to kill Fa-sai and reassures him that he won't tell her, not out of kindness but because he wants Fa-sai to forget Daniel and his family entirely. Fa-sai then approaches Daniel, telling him that her boss wants him to try on a suit as well. Daniel agrees but, pulling her into the fitting room with him, tells her angrily that he needs to teach someone untrustworthy like her a lesson. Fa-sai protests that he's already punished her enough, but Daniel insists she feel the same pain he does. He becomes aggressive, frightening Fa-sai for the first time, prompting her to call out to Chen-min for help. This startles Daniel, who lets her go. In his frustration, he punches the mirror, injuring his hand. Chen-min rushes to cover Fa-sai with his jacket, noticing she's crying, and realizes what Daniel had done. Chen-min is ready to confront him, but Fa-sai stops him, asking him to take her home instead. Quan, witnessing everything, stands frozen, horrified by Daniel's actions. Later, B-Fi is thrilled to bump into Biao by chance and, learning he just finished his security shift for Daniel, insists he accompany her on an errand, saying she needs help. Reluctantly, he agrees and is surprised when they arrive at an orphanage. B-Fi has bought many toys and gifts for the children and asks him to help carry them inside. Biao notices how much the kids love her. When one little girl asks Biao to let her paint his face, he refuses, but when she ignores him and does it anyway, he snaps at her, scaring the kids and making them cry as he leaves. B-Fi follows him outside, furious, accusing him of being heartless and pointing out that he should take a look at these kids who have it worse than him. She storms off, vowing to stop caring for him as she realizes he's not as kind as she'd thought. Returning to the car, she notices she left some gifts behind. When she goes back to the orphanage, she finds Biao has returned as well. He's letting the children draw on his face and playing with them for the first time. Seeing him laugh and engage with them, B-Fi's heart softens, and she decides to keep her feelings for him. Later, as she helps clean the paint off his face, it's clear that Biao has started to develop feelings for her too. Back with Chen-min, he approaches Fa-sai, asking for a chance to make her the happiest girl alive before she leaves. When B-Fi gets home, her mom insists they go check on Eat, who's been absent from work, apparently devastated by Quan's breakup. When they find him unresponsive, they fear the worst and rush inside, only to discover he's fine, just lost in thoughts about Fa-sai. In a daze, he tells her he knows she still loves him and urges her to come back. Fa-sai, however, firmly denies that her concern means she loves him again, letting him know he no longer matters to her. In his frustration, Eat swears he'll win her back. The next morning, Chen-min arrives at Fa-sai's house and asks her mother's permission to escort Fa-sai to the magazine's event that night. Her mom is pleased and encourages Fa-sai to wear the beautiful dress Chen-min bought her. Initially resistant, Fa-sai finally agrees after her mother reminds her that she'll be photographed because of her recently published novel. Wearing the dress, Fa-sai looks stunning, and everyone is mesmerized when she arrives with Chen-min. Spotting her, Daniel is momentarily captivated by her beauty. To spite him, Fa-sai holds Chen-min's hand, reminding Daniel of their last encounter. Daniel withdraws to his room, agitated, and not follows him to go over his event tasks. Frustrated, he sends her away, asking for his usual assistant instead. When Fa-sai enters, he greets her coldly, and as he reads her novel, he realizes it recounts their story from when they first met. Intrigued, he asks her about the ending, and she says it's a happy one, like every love story should have. As she explains the program schedule, he impulsively pulls her close. Just as he's about to kiss her, she stops him, questioning if he's the same Daniel she once loved. She warns him that she'll scream if he tries anything and tells him that Chen-min is outside, ready to protect her. Unbothered, Daniel uses her feelings against her, kissing her anyway. As she nearly forgives him, Quan enters, and Daniel coldly asks her to leave, as if dismissing her. Heartbroken, Fa-sai exits, humiliated and devastated. Not spots a man disguised as a waiter carrying a weapon and panics. She immediately tells Biao, who races to protect Daniel. Meanwhile, Daniel and Quan are on stage, and just as the gunman is about to fire, Biao intervenes, redirecting the attack so that the bullet only grazes Quan. Daniel quickly carries her away to safety, while Chen-min shields Fa-sai, who is terrified for Daniel's life. Suddenly, Daniel runs out of bullets, and everyone is shocked as Chen-min raises his gun towards Daniel, causing alarm. However, he actually shoots a different assailant approaching Daniel from behind. Chen-min then grabs Fa-sai and quickly escorts her out. When she stops him and asks why he helped Daniel, Chen-min reveals he did it for her because he never wants to see her sad. The mastermind behind the attack is revealed to be Oliver, an enemy of Daniel, who's working with Tian Kong. Tian, realizing that one of his men has overheard their conversation, warns him against telling Chen-min anything or face death. Meanwhile, Quan is taken to the hospital, but luckily her condition isn't critical. When Eat sees the news, he rushes to Fa's house, pretending to be concerned. In reality, he tells her parents about Daniel's dangerous mafia connections, prompting Fa's mother to forbid her from seeing Daniel and instead urges her to focus on Chinmin. Fa-sai tells her that Chinmin is also involved in the mafia, shocking her parents, who then warn her against associating with either man. Eat, feeling smug, is thrilled to have eliminated both rivals without much effort. However, the next day, when Chinmin visits Fa-sai at her house, she hurries outside to ask him to leave before anyone sees him. But her father appears, furious, and threatens to kill Chinmin if he comes near Fa-sai again. Desperate, Fa-sai reveals that it was Chinmin who paid for her father's surgery, which calms him down. Taking Chinmin aside, her father demands to know what he expected from Fa-sai in return. Chinmin admits he initially forced Fa-sai to steal something important from Daniel, angering her father. Apologizing, Chinmin confesses that he was once reckless and self-centered but now genuinely loves Fa-sai and is willing to do anything to make her happy. Later, Yao wakes up from a nightmare, visibly terrified. When a guard enters his room, Yao hits him in a panic and escapes into the street. Oliver spots him, recognizing him as Chinmin's troubled brother, and approaches him. But just then, Tian Kong, who has been searching for Yao, arrives and confronts him. Terrified, Yao seeks protection from Oliver, who's shocked when Yao reveals that Tian Kong killed his father and now wants him dead too. Tian quickly injects Yao with a sedative, sending him home with his men. Afterward, Oliver asks Tian about what he overheard, and Tian pulls a gun on him, warning him that he'll regret uncovering the truth. Oliver feigns loyalty, claiming he'd only be happy to learn everything from the future leader of the White Tiger Gang and promises to be Tian's right-hand man. Pleased, Tian confesses that he killed Chinmin's family because they weren't suited for their positions. He explains how he, once an orphan taken in by Chinmin's family, grew resentful due to their poor treatment and Ben's constant bullying. One day, he memorized the safe's combination where Chinmin's father stored the black book, then poisoned him and watched as he died slowly. When Yao and his men arrived to defend his father, Tian had his own men kill them, taking out Yao himself. However, Tian couldn't find the black book and feared Daniel had taken it, so he plotted to frame Daniel as a criminal using its contents. When Chinmin returned from studying abroad, Tian saw an opportunity to use him to find the book and later planned to kill him and assume leadership. Finishing his tale, Tian suddenly shoots his own men and feigns being attacked, preparing to frame Daniel. Moved by Tian's story, Oliver promises to help him retrieve the book and eliminate Daniel, asking to be rewarded once Tian becomes the gang's leader. But as Oliver leaves, it's revealed he secretly recorded Tian's confession. He contacts Daniel, revealing the evidence and destroying the recording before Daniel's eyes, then tells him he has another copy and more incriminating information against Tian. He offers to meet Daniel that night with the black book as proof, but Tian, sensing betrayal, sends a man after Oliver. When Oliver fights him off and escapes, he's horrified to find Tian waiting for him in a car, ready to finish him off. Tian Kong, having discovered Oliver's betrayal, takes him to an isolated place, brutally severs both his hands, and buries him alive. Relishing his victory, Tian Kong plays music and dances in celebration. The following day, Daniel visits the magazine office, and the director proudly tells him about a major boost in sales. Chinmin surprises them by announcing he's withdrawing his investment, explaining he only invested to help them initially and never expected profits. Daniel then learns from the director that Fa-sai is visiting Quan at the hospital and offers to drive Fa-sai there, as he's headed that way. At the hospital, Daniel and Quan playfully tease Fa-sai with their closeness until she, visibly uncomfortable, steps out. Daniel follows her and suggests she call Chinmin to pick her up, hinting that he wants to speak with him about something beneficial for him. When Chinmin arrives, Daniel pulls him aside, warning him about Tian Kong and advising him not to trust him. Chinmin gets defensive, declaring he trusts no one but himself, then leaves with Fa-sai. On the way back, Fa-sai urges Chinmin to consider Daniel's advice, reassuring him that Daniel truly cares about him. She tells Chinmin that Daniel has never spoken ill of him and asks him to at least reflect on his words. Chinmin agrees, saying he'll do it for her, not for Daniel. Later, Chinmin asks Tian Kong for Ben's doctor's contact information, hoping to check on his brother personally. Tian Kong grows suspicious after his men inform him that Chinmin met with Daniel, worrying that Daniel may have revealed something. The next day, while Fa-sai is out shopping for her colleagues, she's ambushed by a gang who drugs and kidnaps her. Hours later, Daniel receives a video of Fa-sai bound with a bomb strapped to her. The kidnapper calls him, giving him only 1 hour to find his beloved, otherwise, it's over for her. Panicked, Daniel orders Biao to search the magazine office. There, he finds Bi-fi and not waiting outside, worried about Fa's delay. When Daniel tries calling Fa, she's shown in a locked room, unable to answer due to her restraints. Biao suggests tracking her location using her phone's GPS, and not recalls that Fa-sai wrote Fa's passcode in her notebook in case she lost it. Bi and Not rush to Fa's house under the pretense that Fa sent them, retrieve the passcode, and send it to Daniel. Using it, Biao finds that Fa is still in her home. Daniel gathers his men and heads over, searching for her discreetly without alarming her family. As Daniel calls out for her, Fa hears him and bangs her head against the box she's trapped in to get his attention. Following the sound, Daniel locates her, calming her down and defusing the bomb. But when he lifts her out, he notices her head is bleeding, and she faints from the trauma. Shouting for Biao to prepare the car, Daniel frightens her family, who don't understand what's happening. Bi steps in to reassure them, leading them to follow Daniel to the hospital. Later, Biao informs Daniel that the bomb was fake and meant to deceive them. Daniel recalls his father's warning to monitor the gang's operations closely, as some insiders might be using their ships for drug trafficking. After ensuring Fa is safe, Daniel rushes to the port, where he catches some of his men smuggling drugs hidden in their cargo. Just as he's about to discipline them, the police raid the port and arrest him. Tip, reveling in the success of framing Daniel, soon learns his men are confessing that they acted without Daniel's knowledge. Then, Tip receives a mysterious call from someone who, based on the voice, is revealed to be Tian Kong, offering him 10 million baht to frame Daniel for the crime. Tip, realizing Daniel's innocence, confronts him about the call and asks if he knows who might be behind it, vowing to catch the person who attempted to bribe him. Daniel is soon released on bail after proving his innocence, but Tian Kong is infuriated upon hearing the news. When Daniel returns home, he finds the other mafia leaders gathered, all visibly upset with him. They blame him for ordering them to cease illegal activities after assuming leadership of the biggest gang, which they were all obliged to follow. Wang, furious, strips him of his leadership as punishment. Tian Kong celebrates, knowing that leadership will now pass to the second largest gang, the White Tiger. However, a rival gang leader, who harbors some loyalty to Daniel, challenges the decision, asking to give Daniel a second chance. Chen Min also feels sympathy and supports Daniel's plea. Despite this, Wang stands firm, removing him from leadership but deciding not to hand it over to the White Tiger. Instead, he announces his own return to the role. Once at home, Tian Kong blames Chen Min for not taking the position, but Chen Min reveals that he wants to avenge Daniel while he's strong as a dragon, not a dog. When he turns, Tian Kong wanted to kill him, but stopped until he can find the Black Book. The next day, Daniel's mother visits Fa to check on her and learns that Fa heard about Daniel's recent allegations on the news. When Daniel's mother asks if Fa believes them, Fa passionately defends him, confident he would never do such a thing. Delighted by Fa-Sai's unwavering support, she reveals that Daniel loves her as well and encourages Fa-Sai not to give up on him. Before leaving, she shocks Fa-Sai by revealing the decision to remove Daniel from leadership. When she returns home, she tells Daniel that she was with Fa-Sai and asks him to hold on to his love for her and not to distance himself no matter what happens. On the other side, Tian Kong meets Wang and suggests that they enter a big project together. Wang, after reviewing the project and realizing it could bring in a lot of money, agrees. Tian Kong then asks him to bring him the Black Book first so that he can work with him without fear. Being greedy, Wang goes home and confronts Biao, demanding to know the location of the Black Book as an order from the head of his gang. Biao refuses, explaining that he was loyal to Daniel, not because he was the gang leader, but because of what Daniel did for him. When Wang feels challenged by Biao's loyalty, he orders his men to beat him until he confesses. Despite the harsh methods they use, Biao still doesn't reveal anything. Wang then orders them to cut off Biao's arm, but just as they are about to do it, Daniel arrives. The moment Biao sees him, he gives up and faints. When Daniel sees Biao's condition, he becomes furious with his father, but his father threatens him, saying that if he doesn't bring him the Black Book, he will cut him off from the family. Daniel tells him that he doesn't care and walks away, leaving his men to take Biao to Bifai's house. She is shocked to find him in such a state. Biao explains what happened and tells her that he is in danger, suggesting that he should stay in the hospital or return to the palace because it is the safest place for him, and it would also ease her mind. That night, Biao's condition worsens, and he dreams about his family, crying while Bifai comforts him and stays by his side until he calms down. When he wakes up, he is surprised to find her next to him, and she is happy that he is okay. She informs him that he is there at Daniel's request and that he cannot leave. Meanwhile, Daniel is surprised to find Fa-Sai sitting with them at their house. His mother explains that she brought Fa-Sai over while Wang is away so they could be comfortable. When they are alone, Fa-Sai apologizes for her role in his losing the leadership position. She expresses her happiness upon realizing that he still loves her and is concerned for her. She hugs him and tells him that she won't ask him to forgive her, but she will do anything to make him happy and maintain their love. Daniel is very pleased, seeming to have forgotten his anger. Suddenly, Quan enters, furious to see Fa-Sai in Daniel's embrace. After Fa-Sai leaves, Quan follows her and asks why she is there, knowing that Wang cannot stand her. For the first time, Fasai responds by saying it doesn't matter what Wang thinks, what matters is that Daniel loves her. Daniel's mother overhears their conversation and hears Fasai confess to Quan that she loves Daniel and will do anything to save their love. When Quan mocks her declaration, saying she shouldn't say such things in front of others because it embarrasses her, she argues that someone like Daniel would never look at someone poor and worthless like her. Fasai challenges her, asking her to wait and see who Daniel will care about in the end, warning that she will be the one to lose the most. After Quan leaves, she considers following her to confront her, but Daniel's mother calls her, prompting her to change her expression and act innocent. Daniel follows Fasai, asking why she left, and she explains that she wasn't prepared to meet her rival. Daniel assures her that he will never allow any woman to compete with her in his heart and offers to drive her home. Meanwhile, when Quan looks for Daniel at home, his mother irritates her by telling her that he went to drop Fasai off and that he is used to staying out late with her. Angry, she leaves. Out of frustration, she calls Wang to tell him that she saw his daughter hugging Daniel at his house. However, she is surprised when Eat answers. She urges him to inform her father, claiming he will lose her too. At that moment, Eat reconciles with her father, who believes that despite Eat's betrayal, he is better than the mafia. When Fasai reaches her home, she finds Eat waiting outside and he asks her to leave them alone because he wants to talk to Daniel. Once she leaves, Eat tells Daniel to stay away from her and not to get close to her again. When Daniel refuses, Eat acts childish and starts calling for Fasai's father. When he arrives, Eat informs him that Fasai was at Daniel's house and that Daniel is there to drop her off. This makes her father angry, and he drags her home, hitting her for not listening to him. No matter how much Fasai tells him that she loves Daniel and won't distance herself from him, her father beats her more. Throughout this, Daniel stands by watching without defending her. Eventually, Daniel steps in and tells her father not to hit her and that if he wants to punish someone, he should punish him since he is the one who entered her life. Suddenly, her father falls ill, and Eat steps in, managing to help him, but he tells them that if his condition worsens, he needs to be taken to the hospital. Due to his urgent work, he cannot stay with them, so Daniel suggests he should stay to help in case of any emergencies. That night, Fasai goes to her father, reconciles with him, and tells him about Daniel's protection for her. She explains how they met in Japan and how trustworthy he is. She confesses that she loves him very much and asks her father to give him a chance. Her mother softens and tries to convince her husband to accept Daniel as well. Her father agrees to make her happy. Fasai takes a photo with them to capture the moment and sends it to Daniel to cheer him up. The next morning, Wang wakes up to find Daniel not around. Despite this, he tries to deal with her because of his daughter, but he keeps criticizing Daniel, saying he doesn't understand honest work like them and that he is not fit to do anything without killing people. Daniel, to prove to him that he is a good person, helps him with restaurant work. However, her father takes over and they go to the market to buy their supplies. After Daniel finishes, he finds a guy bothering an elderly woman. When he protects her and hits the guy, all the supplies he bought get ruined. Because he didn't bring extra money, he returns to them with the ruined supplies, causing her father to get angry with him and insult him aggressively. He is kicked out of the house, but some vendors run after Daniel and offer him plenty of vegetables and fruits in return for his help. Fasai's father feels embarrassed and allows him to stay with them. Shortly after, Daniel receives a call from Joe, who asks him to come quickly and reassures him about a certain person, letting him know that he has started to regain consciousness from his coma. Daniel goes to him, and it becomes clear that the person they were talking about is Oliver. It is shown that the day Daniel went out to meet him and get the recording, he was worried, so he asked his men, Joe and Cho, to go to his house and keep an eye on him until he arrived. During their surveillance, they saw Tian Kong torturing someone and burying him alive on the recording he had with him. After he left, they were the ones who saved him. Daniel sees Joe watching a video of his son, who looks very happy. Daniel takes the video from him and learns that his son was born some time ago, and he hasn't seen him yet or even held him. Daniel allows him to go see Hong Kong. Joe refuses because he wants to stay by his side to protect him until Biao's health improves. Meanwhile, we shift to Biao, who wakes up startled by loud banging noises. He grabs his gun and goes to see what's happening, only to find Bifai trying to prepare food for him. When Bifai sees him, she takes the weapon from his hand and tells him he doesn't need to worry while he is with her because she will protect him with all her heart. She takes him to eat herself, caring for him and telling him that this is her first time cooking such a meal because she is used to quick preparation foods. She tells him that when she used to eat healthy food, it was at her friends' houses. When he asks her if she remembers her family, she begins to cry and shares that she thinks about them every day and dreams that they would be with her, worrying about her just like Fasai's family does. They ask her why she was late and where she had been, and they are happy for her when she succeeds. Just like him, she feels lonely, and as she wipes away her tears, which betray her, Biao takes her hand and finally confesses that he loves her. He feels happy when he is with her again. The next day, After Daniel arrives at Fasai's house, he runs into Eat, who is upset with him and accuses him of fabricating the problem that occurred in the market to make himself look like a good person who helps others. However, he will reveal his true self to Fasai because he won't allow him to be with her. Daniel provokes him by not responding and walks away, causing Eat to be furious. Eat then accuses Fasai, claiming she used to try to do bad things with him so he would remain with her and that she is not good. Daniel, of course, does not believe that about her and hits Eat. When Fasai's family comes to the sound of their argument, Eat pretends to be scared and claims that Daniel is attacking him. Fasai does not believe that Daniel could hurt anyone without reason. When they ask him what happened, Daniel sees people gathering around them and is afraid to tell them what Eat said. As a result, bad rumors about Fasai spread, so he refuses to talk, admits that he is wrong, and apologizes to everyone. Fasai's father becomes afraid of him and drives him away, asking him not to come near them again. He pulls his daughter and takes her inside the house. When she goes to her room, she finds Daniel calling her and asking if she is upset that he hit Eat. She says no, and that she wished he had hit him even more, but she doesn't want him to get into trouble because of her father. Daniel promises her that he will do everything possible to soften her father's heart toward him so they can be together. Tian Kong goes to Wang at home and learns from him that he couldn't take the black book from Daniel. He asks him to start implementing their project and not to fear anyone because he will support him and won't let anyone like him. Daniel's mother hears their conversation and becomes worried about Chenmin and Yao because of the strong trust Tian Kong has gained by protecting her husband. When Daniel arrives home, his mother tells him that she is worried about Chenmin and Yao, explaining that his father imposed protection on him and supported him. Daniel calls Chenmin and asks him to meet because he has evidence against the real person who killed his father, intending to show him Oliver and let him hear the recording that Oliver made for Tian Kong. Chenmin agrees to meet him because Fasai asked him to trust Daniel. It appears that Tian Kong is spying on Chenmin's calls and fears that Daniel will learn the truth. He asks his assistant to monitor Daniel and see who the person is that wants to show Chenmin and Tian so that he can prevent Chenmin from leaving. Yao is then shown holding a knife and screaming because he is terrified of sharp objects. When Chenmin hears him, he rushes to see what is happening and finds Yao with the knife in his hand. As he tries to catch him, Yao becomes scared and accidentally injures Chenmin, but Chenmin and his men finally manage to subdue him and calm him down. At the same moment, it seems that Tian Kong is planning something and calls someone to ask them to send a specific video to Daniel. Before Daniel goes to meet Chenmin, he receives a video from a strange number. When he opens it, he sees Yao, Chenmin's brother, filming himself attacking Baton and tying her up, all while she is screaming and crying loudly. Daniel realizes now why Baton betrayed him, and it's because she was afraid of being exposed in front of him. The world turns dark for him as he breaks down and starts destroying everything around him. When his family hears him and rushes to him, he reveals that he has learned the reason behind Baton's betrayal. Chenmin's family blackmailed her. He leaves them, determined to seek revenge. All the way, he remembers Baton and how, even after her betrayal was revealed, she refused to talk about what happened to her because she was afraid he would commit a crime and kill Yao, leaving him with a message even after her death to defeat his enemies through forgiveness. As Daniel drives through the streets, he is overwhelmed by his emotions, torn between seeking vengeance and offering forgiveness. When he arrives at Fasai's house, he embraces her tightly, urging her to take care of herself and to tell him if anyone harms her. Just as he leaves, Tian Kong's assistant watches him closely. Meanwhile, when Daniel heads to Oliver's location, Tian Kong's assistant follows him. However, Joe notices and intervenes, leading to a confrontation where Daniel finally channels all his pent-up anger and sadness. Over at Chenmin's place, he confronts Tian Kong, demanding to know how the knife ended up with Yao. Suddenly, he receives a picture from Daniel showing Tian Kong's assistant beaten up. Confused, Chenmin calls Daniel, who urges him to ask his men why they're surveilling him. Unable to contain his frustration any longer, Tian Kong draws his weapon and shoots Chenmin in the leg. Hearing the gunshot, Daniel panics for Chenmin's safety and rushes over to help. Chenmin commands his men to kill Tian Kong, but they all side with Tian Kong instead. It dawns on Chenmin that Tian Kong has been the traitor all along, the one who killed his father and framed Daniel. Tian Kong, clearly tired of Chenmin's foolishness, scoffs at him, acknowledging that he finally used his brain. As a twisted form of celebration, he delivers a brutal blow that knocks Chenmin unconscious. Daniel then receives word from his men watching the White Tiger gang that Tian Kong has taken Chenmin and his brother to a remote house in the mountains. Without hesitation, Daniel sets off for the location, unaccompanied. Meanwhile, Chenmin wakes up to find Tian Kong torturing his brother. Frantic, he screams at Tian Kong to hurt him instead and spare his brother. Tian Kong, relishing the moment, incites his men to continue their merciless assault on Chenmin. Yet, Chenmin bravely withstands the pain, doing his best to defend himself while Yao pleads with him to flee. In a moment of clever deception, Chenmin pretends to run away, slowly escaping into a deserted house. However, Tian Kong follows, stabbing him recklessly before planting a bomb in his lap. The instant Tian Kong exits the building, he detonates it. Just as Daniel arrives, thinking he has lost Chinmin, he is stunned to see Chinmin crawling out. Daniel rushes to him, taking him to safety and ensuring he gets medical help. During this chaos, Yao, now healed, returns to protect Daniel and expresses his sorrow for what happened to Chinmin. When Daniel learns from Yao how Tian Kong dared to act this way, he explains that he is under the protection of his father. At that very moment, Tian Kong meets with Wang and the other gang leaders, showing them the video of Yao and Baton. He reveals that Chinmin is missing, convinced that Daniel intends to kill him in retaliation for what happened with Baton. The other gang leader tries to defend Daniel, but Wang calms the room, asserting he will deal with Daniel himself. The gang is left without a leader, and it is decided that Tian Kong will assume control. Although the kind gang leader is hesitant about this decision, he cannot protest. Later, Wang speaks privately with Tian Kong, expressing his disbelief about the accusations against Daniel, fully confident that his son would never harm Chinmin. He didn't oppose the earlier discussion in public to allow Tian Kong to lead, but he offers to help Tian Kong get Daniel back in charge, warning him that failure to do so will result in severe consequences. Meanwhile, Daniel takes his men to the magazine office, where he requests leave for Fasai, explaining he needs her for urgent work. The manager agrees but insists that Fasai must keep submitting her stories. When Fasai hears this, she is overjoyed and starts preparing to meet Yao. While Daniel is exiting the office, he asks Biao if he sent gifts to Zhou's family. Bifai steps out and overhears Biao recounting what he bought. When Yao thanks Daniel on behalf of his family, Daniel humbly dismisses it, calling it nothing compared to what he owes to his most loyal men. At that moment, Bifai's friends are eavesdropping, knowing that Bifai has feelings for Biao. They encourage her by mentioning that Biao is married with a child. Unable to believe it, she confronts him, only to find him speaking on the phone with Zhou's wife to check if everything arrived safely. The realization hits her hard, and she bursts into tears, running to not to share her devastation. As Daniel walks with Fasai, she notices Yao scanning the area for her. Delighted, she informs him that Bifai is busy with work. Daniel takes Fasai to the secret location where Chinmin is hidden. Fasai is shocked to find Chinmin in such a state. Daniel fills her in on the ordeal, asking her to stay by his side as a nurse since he trusts no one else, fearing that others might believe he is dead. Fasai agrees and begins visiting him daily to care for him. Despite Daniel's jealousy, he recognizes he has no other choice. Eventually, Chinmin awakens, startled to see Fasai with him. Fasai explains that Daniel is the one who brought him here for protection. But Chinmin is filled with dread for his brother's safety, consumed by the desire for revenge against Tian Kong. Fasai reassures him about Yao, sharing what she heard from Daniel, that Tian Kong would never dare to kill him, as he needs to maintain his business ties with the Chen family. Chinmin, when he calms down, tends to reflect on his situation and feels remorse for believing Tian Kong. Despite everything Daniel has done to him, he realizes that Daniel is the only one who has truly helped and stood by him. He spirals into frustration, struggling to walk or take action out of sheer anger and desire for revenge. However, Daniel arrives and stops him, and Chinmin, unable to face him and look him in the eye, breaks down in tears, calling himself the dumbest person alive. Once Chinmin calms down, Daniel plays a recording of Oliver for him, urging him to be patient and plan carefully to get his revenge and finish things. He promises to help Chinmin and not abandon him. Chinmin apologizes and thanks him, but Fasai senses that Daniel is hiding something significant from both her and Chinmin, and she is disturbed by it. When she asks him about it, he shares what he did with Baton, making it clear he doesn't intend to tell Chinmin. He believes that if Chinmin learns about his brother's cruelty, he will be even more shocked, especially since he had loved Baton. Daniel informs Fasai that he wants to recover quickly so he can reclaim what is rightfully his. Meanwhile, Chinmin is refusing to eat or talk, but after many attempts, Fasai manages to get him to eat and brings back his beautiful smile. During this time, Daniel pretends to his father that he will stop caring about Chan's family. The next day, he visits the heads of the gangs to apologize and try to regain their trust so they will allow him to return to leadership. When he meets the good president, the president notices Biao and remembers that he is one of the heirs to the White Tiger leadership. He suggests that Biao claim his inheritance instead of letting someone as lowly as Tian Kong have it. The president's words resonate with Daniel, but when he asks Biao for his opinion, Biao refuses, explaining that he has dedicated his life to protecting him. Daniel tells him that he isn't thinking about ownership and would be happy to be in a position that suits him. Before Daniel heads to the White Tiger Gang's headquarters to apologize to Tian Kong, his father calls Tian and asks him to show Yao to Daniel, and he calls him after Daniel leaves. When Daniel arrives, he asks Biao not to accompany him, fearing Biao might lose control the moment he sees Yao and realizes that his father is behind this, testing whether he still cares about Chan's family. Biao grabs him and hits him hard, despite being upset about using his strength against someone so weak. Tian Kong intervene. After Daniel leaves, Tian Kong calls Wang as requested, and when he shares Daniel's reaction, Wang is pleased, believing it's the right time to return his son to leadership. However, Tian Kong gets angry because if Daniel regains control, he will stop illegal activities, which he despises since he doesn't want to live honestly. So, he decides to eliminate Daniel and his father. When Daniel visits Chinmin to check on his brother, he feels sorry for him when he sees him alone. He starts to play the role of the ignoring Fa Sai's calls and refusing to answer them because he has decided to leave her to Chinmin after losing everyone around him. When Fa Sai feels distressed, she confronts him at home, telling him that she is not a game to be shared with anyone and that she loves him, tells her to forget him and love Chinmin, assuring her that she won't regret it because Chinmin will treat her like a princess. Fa Sai doesn't believe what she hears and feels hurt, realizing she will follow his advice and return to Chinmin, crying as she tells him. Chinmin feels upset for her and comforts her without saying a word. The next day, Wang holds a meeting, and the good president takes advantage of the situation to suggest bringing Biao back to the White Tiger leadership. Wang refuses, not wanting to jeopardize his dealings with Tian Kong. When the president tries to persuade him, Wang silences him, growing angry. Tian Kong can't stand the president any longer and devises a plan to eliminate all his enemies. He sends his men to kill the good president and cast suspicion on Wang, making him a suspect. The heads of the gangs agree to oust Wang from the leadership since he is currently under suspicion and facing charges, deciding instead to hand leadership over to Tian Kong. Wang goes crazy as everyone abandons him in an instant. Instead of being upset, his wife is delighted and tells him that what happened to him is the same as what he did to his son. However, Daniel stands by his father and urges him not to be upset, vowing to seek his innocence. Meanwhile, Tip arrives to interrogate Wang. Daniel goes down to meet him, asking him to come with him to a crucial place that will prove his father is not the suspect they should be pursuing. Daniel trusts Tip and takes him to Chinmin's location, sharing everything that has happened and agreeing to help them search for evidence against Tian Kong. Outside, Fa Sai is waiting because she doesn't want to see Daniel. While she stands next to him, his wife sends him a picture of their child. Out of joy, he shows it to Fa Sai and talks about it, asking her to give a gift to their child. Fa Sai agrees. Meanwhile, Biao is going crazy because Fa Sai refuses to respond to him. When he goes to her at work to ask her why she's ignoring him, she questions if he is hiding something from her. Biao thinks she is talking about Chinmin and asks if Fa Sai has spoken to her about it, causing her to misunderstand. She is shocked that Fa Sai hasn't mentioned something important like that to her and breaks down in tears, leaving him behind as she walks away. It seems that Nodi and her friend are standing by, spreading rumors about her throughout the office that she has kidnapped a married man. Chinmin wants to speed up his efforts to help Daniel and gather evidence against Tian Kong, so he tells Fa Sai that Daniel, at the beginning of his reign, prohibited all illegal activities. However, his gang disregarded his orders and continued to sell weapons secretly under the supervision of his father and Tian Kong. He informs her that he has kept all the sales documents in his house here in Thailand and wants to go retrieve them to give to Daniel and trap Tian Kong. Fa Sai prevents him from going, and she decides to go behind his back, claiming she is going to visit Yao. When she is allowed to see him, she finds him very frightened. As she approaches, he suddenly lunges at her, prompting her to pull out a drawing by Chinmin as a gift. Just as she manages to take it out before anyone sees it, Yao accidentally tears it apart, causing him to panic and start crying. Fa Sai reassures him and promises that his brother will come to protect him. As she leaves to search for the documents, she runs into Daniel, who forcefully pulls her outside and scolds her for coming here without permission. He insists on taking her with him against her will. When Tian Kong arrives and learns that she was here, he storms in to see Yao, discovering that he has part of Chinmin's drawing. Yao begs him not to return it since it belongs to his brother. Meanwhile, Daniel is yelling at Fa Sai, telling her that if Chinmin finds out that she risked her life to help him, he will feel worthless and weak. She clarifies that she wasn't helping Chinmin but was actually helping him, Daniel, to get rid of Tian Kong. Daniel responds that if she truly wants to help him, she should go gather her things from Chinmin and stop visiting him because it will reduce the problems. She cries and asks him not to push her away further since the distance between them is longer than she can bear. When they return to Chinmin's house, Daniel tells him what she did, and Chinmin requests that she follow Daniel's orders and return home, as he is now able to take care of himself. That night, Daniel visits Chinmin to check on his wound and finds Fa Sai applying bandages to him with utmost care. They begin to talk, and Chinmin asks Daniel whom he would choose between Fa Sai and Bhutan if she were alive. Daniel refuses to answer and changes the subject. Meanwhile, Yao secretly enters the White Tiger's house and steals the documents related to the sale of weapons. The next day, Tian Kong holds a meeting with the gang leaders and informs them that he has decided to change their organization's approach and return to illegal activities. Wang refuses this idea, knowing that they are earning well from the casinos and nightclubs where they work, and they don't have issues with the police. However, the other leaders urge Wang to respect their leader's decision. Daniel interrupts them, explaining that for a gang leader to become a true captain, their record must be clean and that respecting rules and following orders is part of their duty. He realizes that Tian Kong has not adhered to these rules during his leadership, which disqualifies him from being a leader. When Tian Kong asks what Daniel knows, he reveals that Tian Kong was responsible for secretly trafficking weapons and presents the documents to prove his claims. Everyone agrees to dismiss Tian Kong from his position, and he becomes furious, directing his anger at Yai. When Fa Sai returns to work, she finds everyone gossiping about Fa being in love with a married man. Now immediately approaches her, explaining that the child they are discussing is Zhou's son and that she is his first and only love. She feels happy and believes him entirely, and her friends celebrate her happiness, while Nodi is furious with jealousy. After Daniel regains his leadership, his father decides to marry him to Quan, given that she is wealthy and would enhance their social standing. He informs his son that he has booked a table for them at an upscale restaurant and insists he go meet her and treat her kindly. When Daniel arrives, he apologizes to Quan for his father forcing her to come. Quan bluntly tells him that she isn't obliged and that she knows his father is interested in her and wants her as his wife. She expresses her understanding that he loves Fa Sai but insists she is the only suitable choice for him, arguing that marriages based on love do not last, unlike those based on compatibility. Daniel disregards her words and leaves her to talk to herself. On his way to drop her off, he is suddenly attacked by someone trying to eliminate him. However, he skillfully defends himself as usual. Meanwhile, Quan, who had twisted her leg during the attack, pretends to be in pain so Daniel would help her. He sees them and becomes very upset, trailing Daniel to his house and demanding to know what he wants with his daughter. When Daniel explains that he and Quan are just friends, he becomes annoyed, saying that after they face danger together, Daniel must take responsibility. Daniel is baffled by the concept of responsibility he is talking about. Just then, Wang enters and confirms that they will take responsibility by marrying them, with the wedding set for next week. Daniel is utterly confused about what is happening around him. Quan's father calls her to share the news that they've successfully implicated Daniel, and Quan can't wait to get the word out. From the morning, she rushes to the magazine to publish the news, eager to show Fa Sai that she has triumphed over her. When she enters the magazine under the pretense of wanting help with her wedding preparations, Fa Sai is taken aback, tears streaming down her face unexpectedly. She tries to comfort her, hoping to prevent Quan from gloating, but Quan revels in the moment. When Quan suggests to the magazine's manager that they arrange her wedding just like the magazine launch party, he refuses, citing their smaller scale. However, Fa Sai persuades him and informs Quan that she will handle all the arrangements. After leaving the manager's office, Quan finds Fa Sai upset and crying, offering her tissues to wipe away the tears of her loss. Fa Sai questions if she is marrying Daniel just to defeat her, prompting Quan to urge her not to give herself too much importance. Fa Sai warns that Quan could get hurt deeply by the life she has chosen. Desperate, Fa Sai runs to Chen Min, crying to him as he comforts her and asks for a chance. When she tells him that she can't love anyone but Daniel, he responds that he's willing to wait 50 years for her. He promises that if he can't win her heart, he'll leave her be. Meanwhile, Quan is constantly in Daniel's life, discussing their wedding preparations and future, while he merely nods along. The next morning, Quan calls Fa Sai, asking her to get the wedding planner at a specific restaurant. When Fa Sai arrives, Quan uses her tactics to hurt Fa Sai, and suddenly, Daniel appears, with Quan in tow to intensify Fa Sai's pain. Fa Sai tries her best to keep her tears hidden and remain strong, but she can't manage. After finishing her work, Quan follows Fa Sai, telling her to save her tears because what's coming will be far worse. Fa Sai weakly replies that if Quan wants to hurt her, she is already hurting and pleads with her to stop. Quan retorts that such pleas are not enough and orders Fa Sai to kneel before her, promising to consider feeling pity for her afterward. Fa Sai sees Quan as a sick person and expresses her pity for Daniel, who is about to marry someone as mentally unstable as Quan. As Fa Sai attempts to leave, Quan suddenly pulls her hard by the arm, stopping her. Fa Sai, barely holding back her rage, tells Quan that the difference between them is that she is not wealthy like her, but her parents raised her not to do the despicable things Quan does. Suddenly, Quan spots Daniel outside and throws herself to the ground, blaming Fa Sai for her fall. Daniel rushes to her, still angry at Fa Sai, while Quan cries loudly and bolts away from them. At that moment, Eat arrives, and when he sees Fa Sai, he chases after her. Daniel wants to follow her too, but Quan tells him to leave her alone and focus on her, making it clear that she was the one who contacted him to show Daniel that Fa Sai will return to him. Daniel understands her motives well and tells her not to pressure Fa Sai into preparing anything for their wedding. He warns her that if she continues her behavior, he will cancel the wedding. On the day of Daniel and Quan's wedding, the entire magazine team gathers at Daniel's house, except for Fa Sai, who stays locked in her room, sad and isolated. Daniel is also in his room, feeling down and wishing he could call Fasai just to hear her voice. Fasai fulfills his wish and calls him, but when he answers, they both remain silent, crying quietly. Fasai breaks the silence by congratulating him and wishing him happiness. Meanwhile, Yao keeps telling himself that his brother will come and rescue him when Tien Kong arrives and overhears him asking who told him that. He replies that it was Buten. So he and his men head to Fasai's house, where he shows her the drawing and asks where she got it. She explains that Chin Min had drawn it for her long before he disappeared. Tien Kong doesn't believe her and suspects that Chin Min is still alive. When he asks about his whereabouts, she refuses to tell him anything, and before she can take refuge in her home, he kidnaps her. Her family rushes to save her, but a sick man catches them and brutally attacks them both, turning his rage on her father. When Fasai begs them to stop, Tien Kong threatens to kill them if she doesn't speak up. Before anything can happen, she tells them she will go with them to show them the way. On their way, she tries to secretly call Daniel for help. He urges Daniel to answer, but Daniel refuses, knowing she had just spoken to her moments ago. After Daniel leaves for the wedding, Biao calls her, and although she answers, the gang snatches the phone away from her. She screams for help, and once the call disconnects, Biao rushes to Bifai, asking her to call Fasai's family to find out what's going on. When Bifai speaks to them, her mother asks for help, revealing that Tien Kong has kidnapped Fasai. Wang overhears them and prevents Biao from telling Daniel because he doesn't want anyone to spoil the wedding. He warns them that from today onward, they will not interfere with the White Tiger's problems and threatens that if Biao disobeys his orders, they will be out of the Golden Dragon gang. Biao informs him that he loves the Golden Dragon, but he doesn't want to remain in it if it will make Daniel regret it for the rest of his life. He rushes to Daniel to tell him, but his father stands in the middle of the wedding, demanding that he doesn't leave. Daniel ignores him and walks away with his men. When Quan descends, her father tells her that Daniel has abandoned her. She can't believe it, breaking down in tears, while everyone around is saddened for her. We go to Tian, who arrives at the house where Chen Min is with part of his men. They enter with the rest to look for Chen Min to eliminate him. However, Chen Min confronts Tian Kong, and he is the one who hits him. Daniel also arrives with his men, and they catch Tian Kong's men, beating them down. Fasai urges Daniel to hurry and catch Chen Min, while Sidrak, fearing the Golden Dragon, runs to help Tian Kong escape from Chen Min, who was about to kill him, but Chen Min manages to shoot Tian Kong as he flees, hitting his arm. Once things settle down, Fasai runs to Chen Min, hugs him, and apologizes for putting him in danger. This long embrace happens under Daniel's watchful eyes, filled with jealousy. Daniel worries about Fasai and whether Tian Kong will harm her after learning that Chen Min is still alive. He sends Biao and Zhou to retrieve Yao from the White Tiger's lair, but they find the place empty, even of guards. When Chen Min learns of this, he gets angry and fears for his brother. Afterward, Daniel returns to Fasai's family and informs them that he will leave his men outside the house for their protection. Her father refuses and makes it clear that he will take his family and escape. Daniel objects, knowing it's dangerous to do so at this time, and pleads with him to wait until everything settles down. At that point, he will leave Thailand and distance himself from them. After he leaves, he goes to Quan's house. Before he can speak, she tells him not to apologize because his apology won't make people forget what happened to her on her wedding day. When he asks how he can make it up to her, she requests him to answer her honestly. If he thinks Fasai is better than her, he admits he has tried to convince himself, based on what she and her father said, that a marriage based on compatibility is better than love. But he has discovered that all his love will always prevail. He apologizes for what he did, and she begs him to give her another chance, promising to do everything to make him love her more than Fasai. Daniel feels sad for her, and when he holds her hands, she lights up, thinking he has been convinced. But he shocks her by saying he is there to break up with her because he doesn't want to feel guilty toward her again. He leaves her in tears. Meanwhile, Nodi and her friend cause a new problem with Fasai's group, blaming Fasai for the breakdown of her marriage. Before Fasai can stop them as usual, Nut intervenes, reminding them that the manager warned her against causing trouble with them, or else they would be fired. When she sees that Nodi is not holding back her temper and hits her, the manager decides to fire only Nodi and Jean because Nut is his favorite and is sure she is cute and doesn't cause trouble. After finishing her work, Fasai finds that Daniel has sent her Zhou to be her bodyguard, accompanying her wherever she wants to go. Daniel goes to Sidrak and asks him to bring Yao back in exchange for any amount he demands. They realize that Tian Kong doesn't care about anyone and steps over those around him to achieve his goals. If he wants to win, he should ally with Daniel, who is certain that Sidrak will bring him Yao because he is like him, a treater who sells anyone for money. But on his way, he encounters Tian face to face, who reveals that he was pretending to go out to set a trap and see what Sidrak would do. When he realizes Sidrak is a treater like him, he kills him and his men, taking Yai with him. Biao arrives with Chu and surrounds Kong with his men, continuously shooting at them. When Yai gets scared and runs, Chu captures him and forces him into his vehicle. To escape from them, Biao blows up their car. We go to Nodi and her friend, who go to Quan and ask her for help in getting them any job in her hospitals, as they are in desperate need of money. Quan, with arrogance, refuses them. They remind her that they helped her a lot to get closer to Daniel, but she insults them, saying their humiliation disgusts her. Nodi stops her as she walks away, telling her that she is not surprised that all the men who entered her life left her, while they all ended up with Fasai in the end. Even though she doesn't love Fasai that much, she is a kind girl who loves to help everyone, unlike Quan, who is cold-hearted. Quan is hurt by her words, and when Nodi stops her, she tells her that when she was helping her to get closer to Daniel, she wasn't doing it because she hated Fasai or because she was rich, but because she admired her and her success at work. She had dreamed that they would become friends, but now she has discovered her true nature and that she is not capable of being a decent person. They leave her crying after exposing her evil nature, and they return to the magazine to plead with the manager to reinstate them, but he refuses. The employees see how much they are begging to be reinstated because they are the ones who support their families. Fasai is affected and enters the manager's office with her friends, pleading for them to be reinstated because they won't find anyone else as competent as them at work. Finally, the manager agrees and reinstates them, making them happy. They reconcile with him and promise they won't trouble him again. At the end of the day, Joe, while escorting Fasai, shows her a small teddy bear he bought for his son to send to him until he can see him, making him very happy. Fasai directs him to a specific post office from which he can quickly send it to his son and asks him to go, saying she will wait for him. He thanks her for her help. As soon as he leaves her, he finds Tian Kong trying to kidnap her. Joe rushes out at the sound of her voice before anything happens and attempts to protect her, fighting off Tian Kong's men. Tian Kong pulls out his weapon and shoots Joe in the stomach, causing him to drop the teddy bear he had just bought for his son, which falls to the ground amidst the chaos. In a moment of panic and horror, Joe fears he might die, but Tian Kong isn't done. He shoots Joe again, and leaves. Despite being unable to move, Joe continues to bleed heavily and frantically plays a video of his wife and child, wanting to see them one last time before he dies. That night, a meeting is held for the leaders of the 4 gangs, attended by Daniel. This meeting is meant to celebrate the opening of a significant project they're all involved in. During such celebrations, weapons are prohibited to ensure everyone feels safe. Suddenly, Tian arrives with a large group of men, launching an attack on the venue. He kills one of the leaders and shoots Wang. Daniel quickly gathers his men and father to escape, but Tian and his men pursue them. When Biao tries to confront them, they swarm him. Just as they are about to kill him, Chen Min arrives, impeccably dressed and leading an army of men. They seize Tian Kong and his crew, beating him. Daniel takes this opportunity to swiftly escort his father to the hospital and returns to assist Chen Min. Meanwhile, Wang, recalling his wife's warnings about the dangers of their lifestyle and her desire for a peaceful family life, reflects on these thoughts as Tai contacts Daniel to inform him that Joe's body has been found in the street. Overwhelmed by shock and grief, Daniel fears that Tian might have harmed Joe and rushes to find him before Chen Min can kill him. He confronts Tian, demanding to know Fasai's whereabouts. Tian refuses to reveal anything, so Chen Min insists he shouldn't waste time and should search for her himself, confident that she is nearby. As Daniel leaves, Kong attacks Chen Min, laughing. When Chen Min asks what's so funny, Tian opens his shirt to reveal a bomb strapped to himself and tells Chen Min he's afraid to go to hell alone, so he wants him to join him. Before he can detonate the bomb, Biao snaps back to reality and rushes in with his sword, cutting off Tian Kong's hand and pushing him away just as the bomb goes off. At that moment, Daniel reaches one of Kong's men and asks where Fasai is. The man pulls a gun on Daniel, but Daniel charges at him and during their struggle, manages to knock the gun away and into the air. After a long scuffle, he finally asks where Fasai is, and the man points to a nearby car. When Daniel sees it, he finds Fasai inside, smiling broadly, but his expression turns to shock when he notices she's bleeding from a gunshot wound from the shots fired into the air. Terrified and anxious, he rushes her to Quan's hospital, pleading for her to save Fasai quickly. Quan reassures him, but during the operation, Quan keeps remembering her warning about being harmed because of her choices, and Nodi's comments about her being a cold-hearted person whom no one loves. She pleads with herself not to give up on life, promising to save Fasai. Meanwhile, when Cho goes to Daniel, he reassures him that his father is fine now. When he sees Daniel's injury, he worries about him and insists that Daniel come with him to get his wound treated. Daniel, unresponsive, pushes him away in frustration, prompting Eat to remind him that standing there won't solve anything and that Quan is the best surgeon in Thailand. If Daniel wants to stay alive and see Fasai again, he needs to treat his wound before it gets infected. Daniel finally agrees and goes with him. At the same time, Biao and Cho go to visit their friend to say goodbye. Biao recalls that Joe intended to resign from the gang to dedicate more time to his family, and he breaks down in sorrow for not even being able to see them. Before leaving Eat, Daniel begs him to stay away from her, warning that if she survives this time, she won't be lucky again. Daniel then meets Quan, who reassures him, and when he thanks her, she tells him that he should be thanking Fasai. She explains that Fasai helped her understand many things that had been clouding her judgment and asks him to let her know that the operation was the happiest moment of her life. Meanwhile, Eat, who is listening to their conversation, approaches Quan after Daniel leaves, expressing his happiness about her change and inviting her to dinner. Quan realizes he's trying to reconcile with her and insists that he won't just patch things up but will flirt with her again until she falls in love with him. She smiles and tells him to prepare himself because she won't make it easy for him this time. Chenmin then goes to Fasai's family, apologizing and informing them that he has stepped down from the position of the White Tiger Gang leader. Daniel arrives just in time to hear him say that he has decided to travel abroad to treat his brother but wants to ask for Fasai's marriage before leaving. Daniel can't stand to hear more hurtful words and leaves before he hears anything else that might pain him. 3 days later, Fasai wakes up and immediately inquires about Daniel. Bifai informs her that he has been missing since the incident, and no one has been able to reach him. Chenmin visits her and tells her that he has officially retired, handing over leadership to Biao, who has become the new leader of the White Tiger Gang. When she expresses disappointment that Daniel hasn't come to see her, Chenmin promises to help her stop missing him. A week passes, and Fasai prepares to leave the hospital. However, her friends continue to tease and playfully mess with her, leaving her puzzled about their antics. They say various things, making it seem like they are planning something, and they take her to a magazine shoot instead of home. There, she finds the floor covered in flowers and initially thinks that Daniel has returned, only to discover that Biao has come to propose to Bifai. Bifai tells him that he didn't need to go to such lengths because she would have agreed to marry him even if he hadn't proposed. She then asks Fasai to fetch her camera from the car. When Fasai goes to get it, Daniel suddenly appears out of nowhere. He informs her that the flowers and everything are for her. It turns out that Chenmin was asking for Fasai's family's decision in marriage with Daniel, and after Daniel left, Chenmin followed him and revealed that Fasai's family would approve of the marriage if he gave up his position in the gang and became an ordinary man. Chenmin also tells him that Fasai doesn't love anyone but him and warns that if he ever thinks about abandoning her again, he will deal with him. We learn that the time Daniel spent away was to finish all his work so he could return as an ordinary man and marry her. When he proposes to Fasai, she agrees without hesitation, and her family and friends celebrate together, taking photos and basking in their joy. This is the end of our story. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like it and subscribe to the channel.